The majestic strains of the pipe organ spread out in concentric circles. On both sides of the Virgin Road, guests in colorful robes filled the seats, and the whole ceremony was filled with solemn dignity. In terms of formality, it was as perfect as a duke's wedding. However, there was no wedding-like joy or bustle to be seen anywhere. I think it would be more appropriate to call it a funeral. It really is. Both the groom's guests and the bride's guests have dark faces. Please control your facial expressions, no matter how uncomfortable you feel. Am I the only one who can do this? I have to walk into the middle of this frozen ceremony and stand next to a man who will kill me. Now, Elise Richter, please come in. The priest, who did not know whether he had come to officiate at a wedding or to attend a funeral mass, ordered my entrance grimly. I had practiced all day yesterday, rehearsing in my head, but I couldn't help feeling nervous. I walked slowly forward, kicking the hem of my dress with my toes, just as I had practiced with all my strength to prevent an accidental fall. But the skirt is not the problem with the wedding dress I am wearing. My breasts. I know my breasts are big and beautiful, but they are too exposed. This is the first time I am wearing it. No matter how good a sensual dress is, isn't it a bit too much on a wedding day? As if I was not the only one who thought so. The glances that looked at me clearly contained negative emotions: disgust, contempt, disrespect, or lust. I walked over to the man who will one day slit my throat, cutting through the heavy air that I couldn't even feel the flakes of favor. Of course, he didn't even look at me. To him, I must be like a curse or punishment given to him. Whoa, I didn't fall down anyway. Step 1 is clear. I bent my knees and bowed my head slightly towards the priest to show my courtesy, and breathed a sigh of relief. The priest nodded his head indifferently and began to recite a prayer of blessing. All things in the world praise you, my God, Hershon. I bless you both, beautiful man and woman, who today will build a happy and warm family in the arms of the Creator today. Well, I don't think I will ever be able to create a happy or warm future with this man. In this situation, knowing that a man who hates me is going to slit my throat, it's extremely unclear whether I'll be able to get either a happy or warm family or a future. But there is no way for me to deny or avoid this situation beforehand. When I opened my eyes, I was in the body of a woman who was going to get married in a week. How crazy the process was, too. Misfortune never comes alone. That's what happened that day. Mind-ji? I told you not to do this. Yes? This is Senior Young-Yoon's. I'm sorry, manager. Minji still hasn't gotten the hang of Excel, and I'll make sure she gets it right. On Young-Yoon, who had done all kinds of bad things just because she was a senior who came a year ahead of me, blamed me for her mistakes. Manager Park, who printed out a messy Excel spreadsheet, gave me a harsh look and nagged me for a long time before going back. I looked at Young-Yoon with a confused expression on my face, but she sat down in her seat as if tired without even looking at me. How long is On Young-Yoon going to live like that? I don't know. She's been cursing since morning. Minji, cheer up. My coworker cheered me up via Messenger, but it didn't give me much strength. Maybe it was because I saw her going to buy coffee with Young-Yoon at the end of lunchtime? I was in a bad mood, but this is such a common thing that I thought it was just bad luck, and I deserved it. It was Friday, and I had a date with my boyfriend after work. But it wasn't until after work that I got a message from my boyfriend canceling our date. Baby, I got the weekend shift and will be working overtime today. I'm sorry. See you next week. I'll buy you something tasty. Aside from not being able to see him all weekend, I was upset to hear that my boyfriend, who had been suffering from overtime lately, had to work through the weekend. If I hadn't stopped by X Mall, the meeting place today, I wouldn't have seen my boyfriend holding hands with another woman. I stared blankly at their backs as they walked away, and only after they were completely out of sight did I take out my phone and text him. Speaking of working overtime, the woman you're holding hands with must be your boss at work. You two look like you're really working hard. Just bury your bones at work and don't contact me in the future. Even when I witnessed my boyfriend cheating on me with my own eyes. Strangely, it didn't seem like my hands were shaking or I was going to cry. Actually, I wasn't even mad. Perhaps I was unconsciously expecting such a breakup. 'Cause I'm not worthy of him. He is a sincere man who grew up in a wealthy family and works for a fairly large company. He is a good-looking man, moderately tall, kind, and educated. Unlike me, who comes from a poor family and tries hard not to show that I have no money, he is a man who is comfortable with a simple lifestyle. I am grateful that such a man treats me kindly, but at the same time, I could not help thinking, until when will this go on? And that when is today. I'm out of money. This weekend, I'll have to pay for a lot of novels in the cart and read them. Thinking about it that way made me feel a little better. It's my pleasure to read romance fantasy, novels before going to bed. Even if I don't have enough pocket money, I have to open one free chapter a day or wait for it. When I thought I could save money to meet an imaginary man and pay for some novels in the cart, my steps back home became lighter in an instant. But it was just my mistake that I thought the bad things of the day ended there. What are you doing now? Hurry up and come here, you punk. Huh? Appa? My older brother was waiting in front of the door to my studio next to the steep stairs in a shabby multi-family house. Before I could even get close, the smell of alcohol made my body stiff. Hey, give me whatever money you have. What? I don't have any money. You have a card. Get some cash on hand and give me some. Appa, did you gamble again? Oh, damn it, you babble a lot. Who are you to nag me? Your savior, who kept you alive so far. I was deafened by my brother's sudden shout. But I was more anxious about whether there was someone next door, or maybe listening to this. Will that savior excuse haunt me until I die? Under the pretext of giving me who had leukemia a bone marrow transplant 13 years ago, my older brother always shamelessly asked me for money. I don't know how much I thought it would have been convenient if I had died without a bone marrow transplant at that time. Even more so today. I tend to forget bad things quickly, but I'm tired of this situation repeating itself. No. Do you know how much money you borrowed from me? Pay it back and ask for a loan. What? This damn bitch. My brother slapped me on the cheek. There was a flash of light in front of my eyes, and my ears were deaf. I felt a strange sensation as if I was floating in the air. Oh, there are stairs behind me. The moment I thought that, immediately after, I rolled down the stairs and hit my head hard somewhere at the end of the stairs. That was my last memory as a Korean woman in her 20s, Choi Minji. I felt as if I had been asleep for a long time. I slowly regained consciousness and realized that I was not dead. I opened my eyes, thinking that I was in a hospital, but I saw a scene that could never be a hospital. Princess room. It was a room similar to the Palace of Versailles that I had seen on the internet. Besides, I didn't feel any pain in my body, which should have been broken or at least badly bruised. No, I even felt more energetic than usual. What? How long have I been unconscious? When I got up from the bed, thick, reddish-brown hair flowed down my shoulders. After suffering from leukemia, my hair was thin and I had never dyed it. With fine hair in my hands, I was stunned, and someone knocked on the door. It's Sophia, my lady. Sophia? I'm coming in. Then the door opened and a young woman with a slightly scary look came in with a copper wash basin on something like a tray. Her clothes look like the maid's clothes that cosplayers often wear. Master ordered you to stop by the office after you get ready. Yes. Hurry. I had to wash my face, comb my hair, and wear a slick dress by this woman without knowing what was happening. And as I stood in front of the mirror to check my makeup, I realized that things were going very strangely. Who are you? My appearance in the mirror was so unfamiliar. She is a Westerner with red hair, light brown eyes, white skin, and a glamorous body. She's pretty, but she looks a little scrawny. It's a good impression for someone who is going to ask for a refund. And in the meantime, someone's memories slowly began to flow into my mind. Edith Riegelhoff, a 22-year-old noblewoman who is to be married a week later. It was strange to have the memory of a noblewoman in the minds of people living in the 21st century. But it was even stranger that her name was not unfamiliar. Edith Riegelhoff. Where had I heard that name before? Who is she? Oh, wait. No way. I remember. It's the name of the villainess in the Refrain novel I finished yesterday. It was a novel titled I Refuse Your Obsession with a Cider One Narration. A cliché story, and usually refers to an unimpeded, exciting, and rapid development. In other words, the world is created only for the main characters. The opposite of cider is sweet potato, a novel with a convoluted story / too much drama. Nonsense. Did I possess the villainess of a Refrain novel? I must have lost my mind. Not the female lead, but the villainess. No, I possessed before I became a villainess. Please wait in your room for a while. I will come after receiving permission from the master. The maid, Sophia, spoke curtly and left without hearing my reply. I immediately recalled the contents of the novel, trying to calm my pounding heart. I must pull myself together at this point. The female lead is Liz Sinclair, right? And the male lead is Cliff Ludwig. I was taken aback, but fortunately, I was able to clear my head quickly. It was a novel that I enjoyed reading, so it's fortunate that I have a lot of memories of it. Liz Sinclair, the female lead of the novel, is a bright, innocent, and beautiful girl like the goddess of spring. However, handicaps exist for all protagonists. She is the illegitimate daughter of Count Sinclair and a maid. A circumstance that makes progress or success difficult. The Count has put the beautiful Liz on the family register, thinking that one day he will be able to take advantage of her. But her family disapproves and harasses her. As the persecution in the family intensifies, the Duke and Duchess of Ludwig, who have come to stay at the Sinclair mansion for a time, take her with them. And that's where she meets Cliff, the male lead, and Declan, the second male lead. Cliff and Declan are brothers from the Ludwig family who fall in love with the same woman at the same time and try hard to win Liz's heart regardless of her feelings. They give Liz what she wants and confront what threatens her without her knowledge. She is the object of their obsession. However, like any naive and good-natured female lead, she shrewdly solves the cases that befall her without noticing that the love the two men shower on her is slightly excessive. Eventually, she marries Cliff, the eldest son of the Ludwig family, and becomes the Duchess of Ludwig, and the Sinclair family, who persecuted her, regret it, and are punished. It's a common plot, but it's such an interesting story. And Edith Riegelhoff is one of Liz's many enemies. Am I in the 3rd volume now? Edith is married to the second male lead in the 4th volume, and it's only a week away. The Ludwig's second son, Declan, who also loves Liz, is forced into a marriage of convenience for the sake of the family. The Riegelhoffs are villains who pretend to support the imperial faction and secretly join the opposition faction to overthrow the Ludwigs. However, unlike Declan, who hates Edith, Edith falls in love with Declan at first sight. She is blinded by jealousy and does everything she can to kill Liz. In addition, while acting as a spy for Count Riegelhoff, She conspires with her maid Sophia to steal internal documents and secrets from the Ludwig family. I'm raising my own death flag. Of course, Edith's evil deed is discovered by Liz, and in the end, the Riegelhoff family falls together. She dies at the hands of her husband, Declan. She really is an insignificant villain. I remember there were some bad comments saying that she was the perfect enemy of women, 3 composition full of jealousy. The original word in Korean is yojokyo, which means a woman's enemy is another woman. Anyway, apart from that confrontational composition, I couldn't understand Edith the whole time I was reading the novel. She has a pretty face, nice body, healthy, good family, lots of money. But why is she so obsessed with her husband? If I were her, I would give him up and live happily. I knew very well that people in love often make irrational decisions, but it took me too long to understand because I didn't have enough money. My wish is to live without worrying about money or worrying about health. My family was not rich, and I even had leukemia when I was young. Although I received a bone marrow transplant from my brother and was declared cured, I was not completely healthy because of the strong drugs and chemotherapy. On top of that, my gambling-addicted brother, who had to move between jobs without even finishing high school, robbed me of my money under the pretext of repaying the favor for the bone marrow transplant, and my parents had neither the strength nor the will to stop him. So, love was a luxury for me. According to Maslow's 5-step needs theory, I was in a very weak position, barely meeting my physiological needs. Still, the reason I had a boyfriend was that I still needed someone to lean on. I needed someone to protect me. Maybe. I hoped that someone like the male lead in a Rafan novel would save me. Of course, that didn't happen. Anyway, that made me envy Edith more than Liz, and I was frustrated by her choice. Why doesn't she throw away her love for a man who loves another woman? If she just gave up her love, she could live a comfortable life. If you are in a harmonious family with lots of money and good health, you should be grateful. Edith doesn't know how happy it is not to worry about money and to be healthy. Why does she desire anything else? I'd rather be Edith. I am very confident that I will do well. I never thought that God would really give me the role of Edith. The saying that words become seeds doesn't exist for no reason. Wait. Come to think of it, my wish came true. Words spoken without intention can sometimes have unexpected results. So I transmigrated into a novel and possessed a villainess? If it was someone who didn't know anything, it would be overwhelming, but this was a dream situation for me, who had mastered all the cliché Rofan novels. My bewilderment gradually turned to joy. Yes, this should be the price of my unfair death. Hooray! The memories of Edith Riegelhoff hadn't completely come back to my mind yet, but they were slowly coming back, which was much better than starting out without knowing anything. Apparently, there will be a dinner this evening with the 2 families who will be joined in matrimony. It seems that God took pity on me and gave me the memory of the original character, which is rare in most Rafan novels. Just in time, Sophia returned. Miss, Master has allowed your visit. Okay, I'll go. I took a deep breath and made my way to Count Riegelhoff's office as Edith's memory told me to. Good morning, Father. It's weird to call a stranger father, but it's not hard to be an idiot with a lot of money. Even if you ask me to act cute, I can do it as much as you want. However, Count Riegelhoff's reaction was quite different from what I expected. Isn't it too late for morning? His gaze looking up and down as if trying to find fault was like the gaze of Manager Park at my workplace. And only then did the memory of Edith's situation in the Riegelhoff family come to my mind. Huh? WW, what's this? I don't remember all the full content of the novel I Refuse Your Obsession. But Edith is definitely an arrogant villainess because she grew up only finally. However, According to the memory that just popped into my head, that was just a mere fake image to deceive the world. Edith Riegelhoff was nothing more than a puppet of Count Riegelhoff. She dressed Edith in fancy dresses and expensive jewelry to flaunt the family's wealth and show off the honor of the family with her arrogant manner. Edith's beauty, voluptuous body, and flamboyant style were all billboards for the Riegelhoff family. In reality, she was a physically and emotionally abused daughter who desperately wanted to be loved by her parents and brother. This is a scam. How can this be? As I was still in a state of shock, Count Riegelhoff spoke in a sharp tone. "You can't make a mistake tonight or the Ludwigs will kick us out." "Yes, father. I will negotiate with them to let 3 of our family's maids work for you. You should say straight up that you cannot entrust your body to anyone other than our family's maids. It would be nice to scratch their egos if they can't even allow that much. Can you do well?" I don't know what he's talking about, but I have to pretend that I do. Count Riegelhoff, who had been writing tonight's scenario for a long time, did not pay attention to my answer and started to curse Duke Ludwig. Only then did I begin to understand why Count Riegelhoff wanted to destroy the Ludwigs so badly. So a man who was worse off than you is now better off and you're pissed off, isn't that right? The current Duke of Ludwig and Count Riegelhoff had been rivals since childhood. However, Count Ludwig, who was less powerful than Count Riegelhoff at the time, was awarded the dukedom after his great exploits in the war. Count Riegelhoff believed that the dukedom was stolen from the Riegelhoffs. It was supposed to be mine because of my grandfather's great achievements. But he stole it, and the emperor is a fool to give a dukedom to that bastard. Okay, well, that's a mental victory. I get it. But why do I have to be the scapegoat for this revenge? According to my newly formed memories, I was going to marry Duke Ludwig's son as bait to hide Count Riegelhoff's dark intentions, and he knew very well that if anything went wrong, I would be the first to lose my head. Why is my family like this in my past and present life? What did I do wrong? I felt like I was about to burst into tears, but I held it together. This wasn't a family where a daughter could cry and be comforted. Still, it wasn't all hopeless. In a week's time, I'll be out of this house, and I'll find a way to live in the Duchy of Ludwig, the main setting of the original story. Yes, there's a crisis at the beginning of every villainous possession story, and as long as I don't do things like Edith did in the original, I'll survive. I made up my mind and prepared myself for the dinner between the 2 families. Despite my best intentions, I was overwhelmed by the majesty of the Ludwig mansion. Riegelhoff mansion was enough to dazzle me, but a duke is on another level. Apparently, winning a war against a neighboring country was a big deal, so the mansion is incredibly large and luxurious. If the Ludwigs, who were less well off than him, were given a mansion like this, is it any wonder Count Riegelhoff was so jealous? The difference was big enough to make me think so. And I'm sure it wasn't just a mansion. I don't know, but I'm sure he got more, like estates and coffers of gold. Anyway, it didn't matter to me. It's more important that I don't get beaten up for interrupting the negotiations today. Count Riegelhoff will try to negotiate to send some maids to Ludwig's mansion. Of course, it's not because he's worried about my safety or livelihood. The maids he wanted to send with me were all mercenaries, trained in assassination and theft. How can you even call them maids in the first place? Especially Sophia, the maid who brought in my washing water, who was quite a favored one, and who had been assigned to guard and watch over me at the Riegelhoff mansion. She is deferential to me, but in terms of power within the mansion, she is above me. And she is the one who helped Edith do most of her evil deeds in the original story. In other words, my life would be considerably safer if I don't take Sophia with me. I took a slow, deep breath, trying not to show my nervousness, and followed behind Count Riegelhoff and my brother, Shane Riegelhoff. Count Riegelhoff, Sir Shane Riegelhoff and Miss Elise Rifter have arrived. After a polite introduction by the butler, we were ushered into a large dining room. At one side of a large, elongated table are the members of the Ludwig family. What a surprise to see characters I've only read about or imagined from the writer's description. I didn't think much of it when I saw Count Riegelhoff, but when I saw the main characters of the original story, I was excited. That person is Duke Axel Ludwig, and next to him is Duchess Jocelyn Ludwig, and that's Cliff, the male lead. As expected, the male lead is so handsome. With black hair and golden eyes, he looks cold when he shows no expression. But when he smiles, his beauty is inhuman. His muscular body made me drool just by looking at his clothes. He's the most handsome man I've ever seen. My heart is aching. But Cliff is only for Liz, the female lead. The one I'm going to marry is the one next to Cliff. Oh my God. Cliff has just been demoted to the second most handsome man I've ever seen. I can see now why Edith is so crazy about him. He's an enemy, but whatever. If he's got that visual, you have no choice but to be crazy about him. Declan Ludwig is a handsome man with black hair and mysterious gray eyes that give him a somewhat rebellious aura. He has furrowed brows, a cold gaze that shows his discomfort, a straight, sharp nose and jawline, and an overall more sensual face than Cliff's. His physique is similar to Cliff's, with a broad chest and a slim waist. And then again, thick thighs, oops. I guess I'm sexualizing them too much. Anyway, let's just say that my unjust death in my last life has been compensated by today's eye candy. And the final visual shock came from the female lead, Liz Sinclair. Despite not being a member of the Ludwig family, Liz, who also attends the dinner, is so beautiful that the novel describes her as the goddess of spring. Light blonde hair that seems to flow on its own, eyes that look like the blue waters of Jeju Island. I feel ashamed that my expression is so poor, smooth, and soft, looking fair skin, and a delicate body that I want to protect even though I'm also a woman. Such is the majesty of a Rofan novel's female lead. I gasped at her beauty. I had to force myself to keep my mouth shut as I felt the word wow coming out of my mouth. But as if I were the only one mesmerized by Liz's beauty, Count Riegelhoff's brow furrowed in displeasure. You have taken the trouble to come. I have prepared some veal for you, as Miss Edith says she likes it, but I hope you find it to your liking. It is a great relief to me, as a father sending his daughter away, to know that you care so much, but Count Riegelhoff's voice trailed off at the Duke of Ludwig's polite greeting. Then he continued, weren't we supposed to have only members of both families present at this dinner? Cliff and Declan turned cold at Count Riegelhoff's question, clearly uncomfortable with Liz's presence. They are doing what male leads always do. Liz is already part of our family. I asked her to come down because I thought it would be a good idea to say hello, as they will see each other often in the future. The Duke of Ludwig explained, but he didn't look too pleased either. It was clear that if the Count said one more word, he wouldn't let it go. Why are you doing this already? I tried to defuse the situation before it got out of hand, but Liz spoke first. I'm sorry. It's not a place for me. Declan grabbed Liz's wrist as she turned to leave. Liz, there's no reason for you to be sorry. You're part of our family. Those who don't understand that don't deserve to be in our family. In the original story, it's written that Edith's eyebrows rose sharply at this moment, and it's understandable, but I have no intention of doing so. My life depended on looking good to Liz, and when I see a pretty girl, I want to get to know her. The Duke and Declan are right, Father. She's someone I'll be seeing all the time when I get married, so what's the harm in saying hello to her now? I can't tell if I smiled properly because I was nervous, but I did my best anyway. Count Riegelhoff nodded and smiled humanely. Well, Miss Liz is kind of like a little sister to Lord Declan, isn't she? Wow, this is a thing to say the least. Count Riegelhoff had noticed that both of the Ludwig sons were smitten with Liz. I fidgeted inwardly, but Declan didn't say anything and looked away. Liz could only stare at him in bewilderment as he dodged the question without answering. Now then, let us begin the dinner. Duke Ludwig quieted the uncomfortable atmosphere, as if to say that he would not allow any further disturbances, and the waiting servants began to serve the food. Hooray for the world of aristocracy in a Rophane novel, where all you have to do is sit still. A sumptuous menu prepared by the best chefs is placed right in front of you. I was worried that Count Riegelhoff was going to go off on a rant again, but he's very civilized and polite in front of everyone, probably because he's the kind of person who stabs in the back with a smile. But it was all a facade. After our second glass of wine, Count Riegelhoff cut to the chase. By the way, I have no doubt that the Duke and Duchess will care for Edith. It's not easy for parents to send their daughter off to marry. Count Riegelhoff looked at me wistfully before turning his attention back to the Duke and Duchess of Ludwig. The Duke of Ludwig nodded with a look that said, "It's finally happening. I completely understand your feelings, but don't worry too much. I will personally take care of her so that she doesn't lack for anything." Oh, who am I to ask such a favor of the Duke? I just want to send along some of my daughter's maids. Perhaps the maids we've had for a long time will be more in tune with Edith's tastes. The crisis has finally arrived, but Duke Ludwig, being the perceptive man that he was, did not answer immediately, but paused. After all, even Edith could be seen as a spy for the Riegelhoffs, and it would not be out of place for Count Riegelhoff to bring in more of his own hand-picked people. Our family's maids are quite skilled even by Miss Edith's standards. Did Duchess Ludwig not bring a single maid with her when she married? Well, in many ways, the conversation was in Count Riegelhoff's favor. It would have allowed him to bring Sophia in with Edith. Count Riegelhoff looked at me again, this time with a kind and affectionate look on his face, as if to conclude the negotiation. "My dear Edith, Duke Ludwig is unwilling to allow you to bring a few maids with you. I don't know what to do." I felt a chill run down my spine at the thought of bursting into tears at any moment, but I had to keep my wits about me. My decision here would determine my life. "I'm fine. I don't need to bring a maid." Edith. After all, the Ludwig family's maids are only as good as ours. And I don't want any maids to leave our mansion because of me, so you don't have to think about sending me a maid, Father. The Duke and his two sons were watching me with sharp eyes. They seemed to think I was going to cushion myself and then demand other terms. But I am innocent, gentlemen. Please forget my father's request, Your Excellency. My father is too anxious to give me away in marriage when I am still so young. No, well, the Duke of Ludwig sounds like he's in trouble. I can't be weak-hearted here. As the daughter-in-law of the Ludwig family, I don't want to be seen as a spoiled lady. I'll come alone, and I'm sure the Duchess will have a good maid for me. I forced myself to smile as benignly as I could. The corners of Edith's eyes were slightly upturned, making it difficult for me to put on an innocent face. The Duke and Duchess nodded their heads in agreement, albeit with a hint of irritation, and Count Riegelhoff's face hardened. As soon as we were in the carriage and out of the mansion gate, Count Riegelhoff burst out. "Are you out of your mind?" I was afraid he would slap me, but I'm glad he didn't. From now on, I have to act with all my might. "Father, didn't you see the look on Duke Ludwig's face earlier?" "What?" "He had already realized what you meant when you said you wanted to send the maids along. What could I do if you made such a blatant demand?" Count Riegelhoff's eyelids trembled at my words. It must have been strange to hear his daughter, who was always so good at doing what he told her to do, stand up and say something out of left field. But I couldn't back down now. What's the point of bringing a maid in if you've already aroused suspicion? There will be more prying eyes around, and that's why I'd rather not have one, Father. Have you forgotten what the primary purpose of this marriage was? It was to dispel their suspicions. First, we must blunt the blade of vigilance they have set upon us. Well, that's what you get when you're a marketing department staff speaker on the Korean peninsula who's been practicing presentation skills since college. As if on cue, the Count's fierce expression softened. So, what are you going to do next? For now, I'll enter alone, and when their suspicions are allayed, I'll make an excuse, homesickness or whatever, and tell them I'm bringing a maid with me just for a while. They won't stop me from doing that. Don't spoil things by being impatient, Father. In the end, Count Regelhoff was persuaded by me. I felt as if the sword aimed at my throat had moved 10 centimeters away. And here I am, after a crazy week, standing in this black comedy of a wedding. The priest is still reciting prayers. In Korea, the trend is to do away with long, boring ceremonies. But I guess that hasn't caught on here yet. And so the faithful children of the Creator build another nest. Hershin, bless the rings they share, and the everlasting covenant that is in them. Finally, the exchange of rings. I turned toward Declan as I had practiced. Unlike me, who turned easily in my uncomfortable dress, he turned slowly, barely, as if he really didn't want to do it. His formal attire, now that I could see it properly, was stunningly gorgeous. But I felt like I was asking for a major accident if I stared at him now. Fortunately, this revealing dress was keeping me sane. Yes, Declan. I know how you feel, so let's get this over with. I mean it. I want this uncomfortable, awful time to be over too. 2 ring-bearers approached with the rings on a small cushion. They couldn't be more than 7 years old, and they are so cute. In contrast to the adults of both families, who looked as if they were about to eat each other, the cheeks of these children were flushed with the joy of being a part of a beautiful wedding. I could only smile at them as they melted my heart. Declan glared at me, then picked up the ring he politely held out my left hand, and Declan slipped the bridal ring onto my left ring finger, barely touching my hand at all. He didn't even support my left hand with his other hand. Wow, he really doesn't like me. What happened next was even worse. He reached out and snatched the groom's ring before I could pick it up. He put it on himself and then stood facing the priest as if he had finished his business. I was the only one standing awkwardly facing him, trying to pick up the ring. The guests from the groom's side burst into laughter, and the guests from the bride's side looked like they would rise up in anger at any moment. I wasn't okay with it, but showing my displeasure would only make things worse. I kissed the children lightly on the cheeks and turned to face the priest. I felt a faint chill radiating from Declan and thought to myself, yeah, it's okay to not have a man in my life. I should be content to have a good life and a healthy body after having nothing, but I'll be punished if I'm greedy enough to want a man. A life of leisurely enjoyment of my hobbies without fear of being beaten by my father or brother. How nice. If I'm lucky, I'll be able to use the heir's excuse to sleep with that handsome, fit man a few times. If that doesn't work out and I'm lonely, I'll make a lover later. Okay, that's it. I resolved once again to give up on the row in the row fan and enjoy the fan to the fullest. The reception, which I was worried would be too crowded and bustling, ended early in a rather chilly atmosphere. I never thought I'd be so grateful that the 2 families don't get along. Liz seemed worried that I might be upset, but I was actually grateful. My dress was too low cut, and I had to keep my back straight all day, which made my spine ache like it was broken at every juncture. Not to mention my feet in high-heeled, uncomfortable shoes and my swollen calves. Just when I wanted to scream that this was torture, Liz, at the Duchess's request, escorted me to the bridal chamber. A waiting maid stripped me of my embarrassing and uncomfortable dress and changed me into a nightgown. I thought I was going to die before the story began. I breathed a sigh of relief that I was still alive. After sending the maid away, Liz looked hesitant to say something. "Is there anything you'd like to tell me, Miss Liz?" "Oh, well." I could have pretended not to know, but I didn't want to miss this opportunity to talk to the female lead, no matter how tired I was. Besides, one of the survival rules for a villainous possession story is to befriend a kind female lead. A kind and righteous Liz would never avoid my friendly approach. Laughing slyly to myself like a character hiding a plan, I realized that Liz was beautiful as she fidgeted with her hands, hesitating to open her mouth. Dressed in a simple yet classy ivory dress, she was even more dazzling than I was moments before, when I was covered in sparkling jewelry. She was more suited to the image of a chaste, shy bride, which was probably what the writer was going for. I apologize on behalf of Declan for his rudeness to Miss Edith today, and I hope you don't hate him too much, because as cold and blunt as he may seem on the outside, he's actually a deeply caring person. Huh? I remember this scene. In this scene from the original story, Liz talks to Edith first as she does now. Then she explodes at Liz, who tells her not to hate Declan, and says, "How dare you wear a white dress to someone else's wedding, and how dare you mention Declan's name in front of me, his wife?" Honestly, as a reader, I know all the reasons why Liz said that. But for Edith, who had to listen to it without knowing what was going on, I think she had every right to be upset. But who am I? I'm the one who read the whole book. I completely understand. Declan was forced into a marriage he didn't want to be in, and I'm sure he's unhappy about it. But that doesn't mean I hate him. After all, he's my husband. I tried to sound harmless to Liz, who would soon meet Declan and tell him my story. It worked, and Liz's face lit up. "You're so mature and sweet, Miss Edith." "Oh my, Miss Liz. You are very kind, and your dress looks great on you today." "No. I think it looks great because of you." "I mean it." "Wow, can she really be this pretty? I wish I could bite down on those plump cheeks and munch on them. Liz, ditch Cliff and come live with me. I'll take care of you." You must be tired, but I've been holding on to you too long. "I'm sorry. You can rest, and Declan will be here later." The blush on her cheeks was cute. I'm sure it's embarrassing to think about Declan's first night after being like brother and sister for 5 years. But don't worry, Liz. It's not going to happen. I waved to Liz as she walked away, and I was finally left alone in the silence. Oh, is the wedding episode finally over? Flopping down on the bed, I sighed and threw off the nightgown the maid had painstakingly put on me, and soaked in the bathtub on the far side of the room behind the curtain. It's nice and hot. The bathtub was set aside for the couple to wash themselves after finishing their lovemaking. It was a little hot, but it was just the right temperature for me, who loved going to the sauna in my previous life. As I soaked in the hot water, the aches and pains in my body seemed to slowly dissipate. Being the daughter-in-law of a duke's family means you can have a maid help you fill the bathtub. That's amazing. As annoying as Count Regelhoff was, and as cold as Declan was, this possession was a blessing in disguise. It's an inconvenient world without smartphones and the internet, but I have luxuries I never imagined when I was Choi Min-ji. In this world, there are books, plays, operas, hunting tournaments, picnics, parties, and balls. I don't have to go to work. I'm free from housework. I don't have to worry about the balance in my bank account. And I don't have to worry about my brother threatening to borrow money in my name. Now, if I could only cut ties with my family. I have the confidence to live quietly and enjoy my life in the Ludwig family without disturbing the male lead, female lead, or even the second male lead, my husband. But Count Riegelhoff is a different matter. Even if I live quietly, if Count Riegelhoff behaves according to the original story, I will be accused of being a spy for my family, and my head will be cut off. It is a suspicious marriage, indeed, a conspiracy. Duke Ludwig suspected Count Riegelhoff of being in league with Archduke Langston, who coveted the emperor's throne. Then Count Riegelhoff offered a marriage alliance to prove his innocence. It was rumored that Count Riegelhoff favored his daughter Edith. So this was a hostage situation. Declan was understandably reluctant, but Duke Ludwig, who had to hold Count Riegelhoff's leash for the time being, persuaded him. This is where Declan's heartbreaking narrative of falling in love with Liz begins. I love you, Liz. I may be another woman's husband on a piece of paper, but my soul will always be yours. I remember the episode where Declan, locked in a dark room, says that line with one hot tear running down his cheek. I can't let this ship sail. The writer wants to toy with the readers. Liz wants to start a harem, and all sorts of other silly comments filled the comments section. In the end, Declan had no choice but to abide by the decision of his father, the Duke. The good of the family was more important. That's the sadness of being a second male lead. Along the way, the machinations of Cliff, the male lead, may have intervened. On the surface, it would seem that Declan would be more obsessed with Liz, but in reality, the seemingly gentle Cliff was far more insane. Maybe that's why Declan was eliminated early in the story before things got too serious. Oh, I don't know. I'm just going to take a rest tonight. I'm tired. Pushing the complicated thoughts aside for tomorrow, I relaxed. I'd been on edge all week since I possessed Edith, and now I'm tired. Drowsiness poured over me as I relaxed, so I laid my head in the bathtub and dozed off. As a result, I didn't hear someone open the door and walk in. You're a bad bride washing yourself before your groom arrives. Ah. I was startled by the sudden sound of a man's voice and hurriedly covered my chest. Who? Is there anyone else in the bridal chamber besides the groom? Or is there someone else you're waiting for? Qui Declan? Declan's brow creased. Not sure if he was offended by being called by his first name, or if he just hated everything about Edith. But his presence here was a surprise for Edith. I thought you wouldn't come. In the original story, there is a scene where Declan and Liz have a conversation around this time. When she tells him to be nice to Edith, Declan grabs her wrist and asks her if she means it, looks at her with desperation in his eyes, and is about to kiss her before Cliff arrives and interrupts. In the end, Declan leaves Liz with Cliff and retreats to his room to drown his sorrows in alcohol. If he does that in the original story, isn't that mean he doesn't enter the bridal chamber? Declan snorted at my answer. Well, at least you have some sense, he replied. Of course I do. You avoided even the contact of sharing a wedding ring, and I'd be a fool not to see that. Declan stiffened, not expecting to be attacked. But I didn't expect him to feel sorry for me at all. To him, Elise Richter was nothing more than the daughter of a cunning count, and the cause of his love's frustration. Did you expect a passionate courtship? As expected, he retorted with disdain. Rationally, I should be angry too. But right now, I was just bothered by everything, sleepy, and realizing that my life depended on not being hated by Declan. Also, it was physiologically impossible to be angry at that face of his. I'm just telling you what happened. And I'm telling you that I thought you wouldn't come here today because I saw how reluctant you were to have any contact with me. So I thought, are you going to sleep here tonight? I said it in the softest voice I could muster, but I don't know how it sounded to him. He glared at me in displeasure, then turned and walked away without answering. Why are you here? Has there been any changes to the original story, or is it still the same? But I don't have the energy to think about it right now. I got out of the half-cooled bathtub and dried myself off. Tonight, I'm going to sleep soundly in that fluffy bed. No more worries. Declan, shouldn't you have gone to the bridal chamber? Liz stood on the moonlit second-floor balcony, looking just as she had when they'd parted ways earlier. The ivory dress she was wearing was so much like a bride's. Declan wanted to take her hand and lead her to his bedroom. But as much as he wanted to, she pushed him away, urging him to go to the bridal chamber. I've been there. Then why are you here again? I had no expectations for tonight, and neither did she. Though it was a bit of a surprise. Liz's eyes widened at Declan's answer. What do you mean? Obviously, a while ago. She was already in the bathtub by herself, dozing off. Yes? Declan chuckled at Liz's confusion. Liz, it's a problem that you think everyone is good. But Miss Edith is a good person, and she was so generous to me at the dinner a week ago. That's because she was aware of my father's eyes, the corners of her mouth quivering with a forced smile. No way. She was so sweet to me today. You'll have to think about whether she was really being sweet or smiling while being sarcastic. Declan couldn't agree with Liz, no matter how fondly she spoke of Edith. Count Regelhoff is a man who pretends to be cultured and kind on the outside, but is really a snake on the inside. Having grown up under such a man, there's no way his daughter could be normal. He pretends to be blind to the hypocrisy of it all now, but it's clear that Edith came to the duchy to help her father with his work. He married her out of necessity to prevent Count Regelhoff from moving freely, but Declan had no intention of making the marriage work or lasting. That greedy Count Regelhoff will dig his own grave before long, and then I can throw that woman out too. Declan clenched his molars as he thought this, and Liz furrowed her fine brow and gave him a troubled look. What's wrong, Liz? No, well, after listening to your words, I wonder if Miss Edith was angry with me before. What? She was angry with you? Oh, no. That's not what I meant. I think I made a mistake. Tell me what happened, Liz. Declan's eyes quickly turned fierce. Liz chewed her lip, then sighed heavily. Earlier, when I was walking Miss Edith out the door, she complimented me on my dress. At the time, I thought it was just a compliment, and I was happy. Liz fiddled with the hem of her dress. The dress she was wearing today was bought for her by Declan, who wanted her to wear it at his wedding. She'd resisted the idea of wearing a white dress to a wedding, but Declan had begged her, saying, "This is ivory, not white." Besides, Edith's dress is white with a lot of gold threads, so it's a lot more glamorous than this dress. So she thought it would be okay to wear something more modest. But if Edith's compliment, "Your dress looks great on you," was meant to be sarcastic, she must have looked funny for grinning widely in front of her without realizing what she really meant. Do you think Miss Edith was offended? Declan gritted his teeth at the mention of Liz's dress. How cowardly to talk to the powerless Liz, when you know very well that it was Ludwig's family who prepared her dress. But Declan couldn't see Liz heartbreak at the mention of this. No way. Given the dress she was wearing today, there was no way she'd be sensitive about your dress. Oh, Miss Edith was so pretty today. So sparkly, and she looked vulgar. What do you mean, Declan? How can you call your own wife vulgar? Liz asked, looking shocked. Declan quickly calmed his ferocity. I'm sorry. That was a harsh word to use in front of you. Your apology should not be to me, but to Miss Edith. Don't you even feel sorry for her? She's come here alone, where she doesn't know anyone, trusting only you, and you're supposed to look after her. But Liz's concern for Edith broke Declan's heart. He grabbed her wrist and asked in a low voice, "Did you mean what you said?" Declan, you're mean, Liz. Do you really have no idea how I got through today? Liz's blue eyes trembled uneasily. Declan was sure she knew his heart. Liz was someone who could not express any opinion about this marriage. Maybe this was her way of trying to soothe his heart. Liz. Declan, I'm... As Liz was at a loss for words, Declan lifted her chin. The look of surprise on her face was adorable. How comforting it was to see such sweetness and innocence, like spring sunshine. Declan slowly brought his lips to hers. Liz. If it weren't for the interruption, Declan might have been able to kiss her. See, Cliff. Pulling away from Declan, Liz waved at Cliff with an awkward smile. That guy is really... Declan growled lowly, but Liz pretended not to hear. And then Cliff, who had ruined Declan's precious moment, walked over, looking as if he hadn't seen the two about to kiss at all. I'm surprised you're not in your room. It's late at night, but Declan, why are you out here, leaving the bride alone? If you feel sorry for her, my brother, go and comfort her. I don't want to create a scandal about coveting my brother's woman. With Cliff refusing to back down when it came to Liz, Declan was finally forced to turn his back. If word got out that the Ludwig brothers were fighting over Liz on the second son's wedding night, it was Liz who would be in trouble. He didn't want to make it worse for Liz, who had enough trouble with rumors as it was. Feeling his heart ache like it had been cut by a sharp knife, Declan went into his bedroom and grabbed a drink. It was one of those nights when he needed a drink to help him fall asleep. I tried to sleep in until the sun was high in the sky, but in the morning, my eyes opened by themselves. Even though I had already possessed Edith, my biological clock alarm as an office worker still went off at 6 a.m. Oh, I'm tired. Huh? Naturally, I was expecting to feel like my whole body was going to break, but it was actually quite bearable. Wow, this is the stamina of a 22-year-old, no, a healthy person. I wasn't even this fit when I was 22, so this must be a basic fitness issue, not an age issue. This is so good. I love it. I'm so happy that I didn't get sick after all I went through yesterday. And as the saying goes, a healthy body leads to a healthy mind, so not. Being in pain made me look at the situation more positively. If I do well, I might be able to live as a beloved daughter-in-law. My husband may have lost his mind to another woman, but my in-laws won't be the same. I was told that I would hate my in-laws when I got married, but I didn't care as long as I could be loved by the people I called in-laws. Okay, first of all, greet them. It was a bit of a Korean tradition, but I don't think any in-laws would dislike their daughter-in-law greeting them the morning after the wedding. Besides, isn't one of the rules of survival for a possessed villain in a Romance novel to win the heart of the main supporting character? I jumped up and down with excitement, then paused. Should I drop some blood? Or something on the bed? In some Romance novels, a noble couple would go through the bedding where they spent their first night and check for bloodstains. Only then would the marriage be officially recognized. But I quickly shook my head. Declan's eyes would jump out from glaring at me if I did something like that. Because he's a man who will keep his virginity for Liz. He is indeed a handsome virgin, but deceptively taking the virginity of a second male lead is a bit much. Would the original Declan, who didn't give up his love even after being rejected by Liz, have remained a virgin until his death? I mourned Declan in my heart and tugged at the string. As I pulled the string, I couldn't help but smile. Did you sleep well, my lady? Yes. Could you please wash my face and groom me? Sure. I'll have the water ready in a moment. The well-mannered maid, who, unlike Sophia, could not make eye contact with me and bowed her head, retreated without a sound of footsteps. Lady, she said. No matter how many times I've heard it, it's a strange word. I'm married, but I'm still called a lady. For if I were called Madame Ludwig, one might confuse me with the Duchess. Sooner or later, Declan would be granted some of the Ludwig family's estates and the title of Count, and only then would I be called a countess. The original Edith died without ever hearing the word countesses. I took a deep breath, realizing that if I messed up, I could follow in her footsteps. With the help of the maid, I tried to transform myself into a true daughter-in-law. But the problem was the clothes. The Regelhofs had sent me a number of dresses to show off their wealth, but they were all so extravagant and cut deep in the chest that I didn't know where to look. "What did you say your name was?" "Anna, miss." "Yes, Anna. Go to the boudoir and ask them to cover the bust of this dress in a more natural way. Take off all the frills, now." "Yes, miss." In no time, Anna obediently grabbed the dress and ran to the boudoir. Seeing her obedient attitude, I realized how badly Sophia, the Regelhof's maid, had treated me. Well, to her, I must have been the Regelhof's pet dog. Just someone dressed up pretty to look at, but nothing more than a dog. It was a stroke of fortune to leave Sophia behind. When Anna returned, she brushed my hair and applied a light coat of makeup, while the Ludwig family's quick-fingered maids altered my dress and sent it on its way. I asked them to cover up my ample bosom, and in that short time, they managed to remove the ruffles and make it look like it was originally designed like this. After removing the glamorous embellishments, the dress was finally wearable. I'll have to get the rest of my dresses altered soon, because how am I going to wear them? I looked at the pile of Edith's dresses and sighed softly. Even just a glance at them is enough to make my head spin. If I wore those, I'd definitely be labeled extravagant and vanity Edith by the people here. Anyway, for now, the greeting came first. I changed into a more modest dress and sent Anna to announce my arrival to the Duke and Duchess. Fortunately, the Duke and Duchess did not refuse my visit. "I think you can go right now." "Yeah, okay, but how do I look?" "You look beautiful." Even if an AI replied, it would be more polite than that. People in this mansion are probably wary of me. Perhaps the maids were also ordered to be careful with their words in my presence. I decided to be generous and understanding with Anna. "If you say so, I suppose." "Well then, will you escort me?" "Yes, my lady." Straightening my back, but with a slight smile on my face, so as not to appear too arrogant, I made my way through the hallway to the small parlor that connected to the Duke and Duchess chamber. The Duke and Duchess of Ludwig, dressed in comfortable clothes, were making tea in the parlor. A teacup was placed on the side of the table opposite them, as if they were making room for me. "Greetings to the Duke and Duchess. Did you have a restful night?" "I slept well, thanks to you." "You must have been tired last night, and to be here greeting us this morning makes me wonder if you're too nervous." "I rested well, too, thanks to the consideration of everyone in the mansion." "Thank you." Duke Ludwig's expression was a bit stiff, but the Duchess accepted my greeting with a rather generous expression. I naturally sat down across from them and grabbed a cup of hot tea to drink. As we made light conversation, they didn't ask me why I hadn't brought Declan with me, or how my relationship with him was. Well, looking at the fact they only prepared 1 cup of tea. It had already been reported that he had not slept in the bridal chamber last night. They would have no reason to bring it up against him. Instead, the Duke asked a question that seemed to be a subtle attack on me. "I know that the Count has raised you to be so precious and fine, but I wonder if you know anything about being a hostess in a noble house. Though, of course, you can start learning now." This is where reading the original story really comes into play. If I'd been asked this question without thinking, I would have been stumped. I can manage cash flow and organize documents. Of course, if the Duke has separate teaching for that, please teach me and I will get up to speed as quickly as possible. Well, it appears that the Count has certainly taught you that. His tone was sarcastic, as if he thought I'd come to steal the family's financial records and internal documents. If you don't believe me, please teach me something else. I will do my best to learn. The Duke of Ludwig coughed unnecessarily, not expecting Edith to say that outright, and the Duchess glanced at him while patting him on the side. Perhaps the Duchess would be more understanding than the Duke. The Duchess smiled and answered on her husband's behalf. "I'm glad to hear you've been learning about accounting and organizing documents. Then why don't you help me with my work starting in 2 weeks? It shouldn't be too difficult. If you want to take a break, you can start next month. Why wait until 2 weeks from now? I don't have anything to do anyway, so if you can just give me the job today, I will do my best." Then, as an afterthought, I added, "Oh, and I'm sure you will need some time to reorganize things as well. So feel free to call me whenever you need me, madam." She'll probably have to leave out the documents she doesn't want me to see. But the Duke and Duchess are veteran nobles who don't show their hearts in front of me. I'm not the kind of mother-in-law who puts my daughter-in-law to work as soon as she arrives. Besides, you'll need time to get the things you need to stay here. Thank you for your consideration. Speaking of which, if you need anything, let me know. Well then, would it be possible to get someone from a boutique if you don't mind? Their eyes widened in surprise for a moment. Then they smiled awkwardly and nodded. They probably thought I was about to order expensive dresses with the Ludwig family's fortune as soon as I got married. Yes, it's good that you have such low expectations, so you'll think more highly of me later. I didn't say what I was going to call a dressmaker for, because I had a somewhat devious idea. And I think I need to familiarize myself with the layout of the mansion first. It's quite large. Could you assign someone to show me around? That can be done by Declan. Declan is busy. I don't need his guidance as I am determined not to run into him as much as possible in the future. It's not like he would have offered to do it in the first place, though. The Duke and Duchess must have realized they were talking nonsense, because they immediately summoned the butler. This is Philip, the butler. He knows the mansion best, so let him show you around. At the Duchess' introduction, Philip bowed politely with a faint smile. My name is Philip Clement. Please call me Philip. It is an honor to serve the newest member of the Ludwig family. It's a pleasure, Philip. I'm afraid I'm taking up too much of your time, though. Being the butler of the Ludwig family, you must be very busy. I'd rather just be guided by a maid. This was originally Declan's responsibility. I can't just assign a maid to take Declan's place. I wonder if the Duchess is feeling sorry for me, which would be nice. In that case, I will gratefully accept your favor. I bowed to the Duke and Duchess, and quickly followed Philip out the door. It would be much more fun to look around the mansion than to sit in my room with nothing to do. And the choice was brilliant. This is the Sistine Hall, which houses art from Duke Ludwig's collection. We rotate the displays once a month. Masterpieces hang on every wall of the spacious room, with statues in between. I can't believe you have an art museum at home with different displays every month. That's amazing. In my previous life, even if there was an exhibition I was interested in at the City Museum, I couldn't go because I didn't have time or couldn't afford the ticket price. But here I can see such high-quality artworks for free. When I thought about it, my heart skipped a beat, even though not all of these paintings and sculptures were mine. Is it okay to come and look at them at any time, or do I have to ask someone's permission? If you're a member of the Ludwig family, you're welcome to come in anytime. I suppose that would include Liz, but who am I to judge? At least I have one place to go when I'm bored. Although there are many other interesting places. This is the jewelry showroom. The Duke's jewelry is displayed here, and the Ludwig family members use it for important parties. Unlike Sistine Hall, you must have permission from the Duke or Duchess to enter. There's a room where the jewelry sparkles. This is where the weapons and armor are kept. It's where the Duke and the young masters usually come, and the weapons stored here are all made by renowned craftsmen. There's also a room filled with extraordinary blades. This is the Great Library, the heart of the duchy. There's also an enormous library. It's going to take me forever to go through all of this. With so many things to do, I got excited and full of happiness. I tried to control my expression, but the corners of my mouth kept turning up, so I guess I just smiled as I followed the butler. The mansion is large, so you can't see everything in one day. I'll show you this part of the house today, and I'll show you more the day after tomorrow. Thank you, Philip. You have such a nice voice and way with words. I lost track of time. You're too kind. My compliment to Philip was genuine, not an attempt to flatter him. He was obviously wary of me, but he didn't show it, and he treated me respectfully. He didn't seem like a talkative person, but he was able to pick out the most important points of each room, making me feel like I was being tutored by an expert. After a pleasant morning with Philip, I decided to follow him back to my room. Philip even showed me a new route, but he didn't stop there. This is the Great Hall. It's a great place to see the beauty of the courtyard, and the Duke himself enjoys strolling and talking here. Wow, no wonder it's so beautiful. The Ludwig mansion is a feast for the eyes wherever it looks, be it the people, the mansion, or anything else. I've always regretted that I never traveled abroad in my previous life. But I never thought I'd be rewarded like this after my death. Visiting European ancient castles would not have been as exciting as this. It's so much more fun to see a real inhabited castle than to see an old castle that's just a remnant of history. So pretty. Vaulted shadows colored the floor and walls, and ivy, just beginning to turn green, climbed the pillars. Over the railing, I could see the well-maintained courtyard. Liz, Cliff, and Declan having tea on the opposite balcony. Oh, well, the young masters often have tea at this time of day, but today they happened to be with Miss Liz. Philip, whose gaze had fallen upon them at the same time as mine, was quite flustered, in contrast to his hitherto calm demeanor. The groom, having left his bride, is having tea with another woman. It's understandable why Philip was flustered. Moreover, I am reputed to be a wicked woman, and Philip will think that I must be in some sort of rage. There's a scene in the original story where Edith witnesses this, and she glares menacingly at Declan and Liz, until they turn to look at her. Naturally, she only received a disdainful glance from Declan, but I was happy enough just by confirming the Duke's wealth and high taste. I see. By the way, the courtyard will be even more spectacular in the spring. Yes, that's right. I'm sure I'll be out here quite a bit in the future, so shall we continue? Yes? Yes. Let's go. I smiled brightly and followed Philip. His eyes looked at me with pity for some reason, but I must be mistaken. It must be Declan, not me, that the butler was feeling sorry for. So, what was her reaction? Duke Ludwig asked Philip, who had given Edith a tour of the mansion. She followed my instructions well, and has a surprisingly good grasp of the layout of the mansion, especially the Sistine Hall, where the artworks are displayed. Did you notice anything strange? No, not at all. In fact, contrary to the rumors, she was very dignified. Ha! Count Regelhoff must have trained her for that. Duke Ludwig furrowed his brow and tapped his fingertips against the end of his chair's armrest. She might have been trained by that snake, but surely Edith was not as rumored. At yesterday's wedding, in addition to her vulgar dress, she maintained an elegant and upright posture to greet the guests. And although she must have been tired, she didn't lose her smile throughout the day. Even after Declan's rude behavior during the ring exchange, she kissed the ring bearers affectionately and didn't make things awkward. She doesn't match the rumors that label her as arrogant and inconsiderate. Rumors are often inflated by sensationalism. In fact, he and his wife had braced themselves for a visit this morning. They had already heard that Declan had not spent the night in the bridal chamber. They knew she would come and question them. Whether it was about how they raised their son or how he disrespected her, Edith had plenty to say. but she literally came to say good morning. The Duke tried to provoke her, but it only backfired. "Declan, he's making things difficult, and we're running out of things to say." It was no secret that Declan was in love with Liz. Duke Ludwig loved her as much as his own daughter, and had planned to make her his daughter-in-law. But until this year, Count Regelhoff had to be kept on a leash to keep him from aligning himself with Archduke Langston, so he could not refuse the offer of a marriage alliance with Edith. As sorry as he was for Declan, he couldn't give Cliff, his heir, the daughter of Count Regelhoff, and after much persuasion, Declan and Edith were finally married. "Don't force me to be anything more than a couple on paper." Declan walked away with those words, looking as if he had lost his soul, and the Duke could say nothing. But Edith was rumored to be a wicked woman, and Declan's neglect of her would at least maintain his justification for expelling her later. "I never thought Edith would be so calm and docile." Duke Ludwig sighed, and Philip coughed lowly beside him. As a matter of fact, on our way back through the Great Hall, Miss Edith spotted young Master Declan on the balcony opposite. "Balcony? No way." Duke Ludwig frowned at the word balconies. On the balcony of the Great Hall, Liz and his two sons often took tea. Yes. Miss Liz was having tea with young Master Cliff and young Master Declan. The Duke covered his forehead with his hand. Yesterday was the wedding, and the groom had not even spent the first night in the bridal chamber. The next morning, the bride saw him flirting with another woman. Even if the Duke was in Edith's position, his blood would have boiled. There must have been a fuss. Well, did he say anything? Did he say anything to make her feel better? Philip was no stranger to the Duke's nervous moods, as Edith's reaction baffled him as well. It didn't bother her at all. What? I don't know what she was thinking in her mind, but she didn't make a fuss or get angry on the spot. She just moved on as if she hadn't seen anything. Even Philip himself could not believe what he was saying. There was no confidence in his voice. For a moment, Duke Ludwig was at a loss for words, because it didn't make any sense. He thought long and hard and finally came to this conclusion. So Elise Rifter isn't normal either. Teask. After returning to my room and having breakfast and lunch brought to me by a maid, I sat out in the sun on the balcony off my room and took stock of the situation. I had already given up so much in this novel, but somehow I felt like I would be stretched thin just to survive. The best thing would be to be part of this family and live a comfortable life. But will it be that easy? I vowed to give up my husband's love and settle for a good life, but only if they accepted me. Should I be honest about my situation and appeal for sympathy? Everything I've ever been was created by my father, and I was actually his abused daughter. If I appealed to them like this, I thought about it, but then shook my head. There's no way the Ludwigs would believe me, and besides, why would Declan accept this marriage in the first place? Once he realizes I'm not even worthy of being a hostage, he'll have the marriage annulled in no time. Then I would be kicked out without a penny, without being able to return to Count Regelhoff's family. Worst of all, I could be killed for betraying my family. Then what about divorcing and leaving? My marriage vows state that in the event of a divorce, I will receive a small mansion and enough money to live on for the rest of my life. It would be the safest option, but I'd have to find out if divorce is possible in this world with only a woman's will. And even if I did, I'd have to prove that I wasn't a spy of my family, and there was no guarantee that they wouldn't come and harass me. What a pain in the ass. Should I run away at night? Maybe this is the most realistic option. Since I have to assume the worst, I have to figure out how this world works and raise some money. Of course, that's a worst-case scenario plan, and the ultimate goal is to stay quiet in a corner of the mansion, sucking honey. Anyway, I think I did a good job with the Duke and Duchess of Ludwig today, so I'll focus on them from now on. Though it would be nice to get a good look at Liz, too. Liz Sinclair is destined to be the female lead of this world, but her life before coming to the Duchy of Ludwig was not easy. The children of the Sinclair family refused to recognize her as a sibling and bullied her relentlessly. To them, she was a doll they could play with. Then the Duke and Duchess of Ludwig came to stay at the Sinclairs' mansion, and Liz saved the Duchess from falling off a horse, and the Duke took an interest in her. When the Duke and Duchess learned of Liz's poor life, they were outraged that the young and innocent Liz was being mistreated, and in exchange for a large sum of money lent to the Sinclairs, they received the rights to Liz. As a result, Liz bore the Sinclair's surname, but the Sinclairs could not claim any rights to her, including parental rights. So, how much money will Liz get when she marries Cliff? As a daughter-in-law of the Duke, I could have secured a share in his fortune, but instead, I became his enemy, and that would be my downfall. In a way, Liz is a character who has all the luck in this world. With her on my side, I could easily escape my fate. In fact, it was the first thought that came to my mind after I possessed Edith, but for some reason, I was reluctant to do so. Is it because Edith is set up as Liz's enemy in the original story? I don't feel comfortable dealing with her. It's understandable. Liz and Edith are like water and oil. Even if it's not a matter of personality, it's more about how could the man I love hug another woman. It was a condition that didn't apply to me, of course, but knowing that Liz was responsible for Edith's downfall made me want to stay away. In this situation, I think it is best to be friendly, but keep a reasonable distance, as forcing yourself to be friendly might arouse suspicion. But I couldn't just sit on my hands. Let's put being friendly aside. First of all, let's observe the three of them unobtrusively. It's a rule of thumb. In order to survive in this world, I need to do some basic research. And the most important part of that research is the three main characters. The next day, I dressed as simply as possible, brought along a pair of Oprah binoculars, and set out to observe the three from afar while pretending to memorize the layout of the mansion. If I can find where Liz is, the other two will follow. I recalled my memories of the original story and searched for where Liz might be. The great hall, the courtyard, the second-floor terrace, and the garden. Finally, I found her. But why outside it's still cold? Under a large tree in the garden, she was reading a book, looking as perfect as if she had been painted. The way she delicately flipped through the pages of a book with a fluffy shawl draped over her shoulders was pretty enough to make a woman like me gaze in fascination. But I was the only one who saw her. Why is she alone? I thought there would be male leads where Liz is. But as soon as I thought that, Cliff appeared out of nowhere. Liz. Cliff. Why are you out here when the wind is still chilly? That's what I wanted to ask too. It's too cold to be outside reading a book. I'm cold too. It's just so stuffy being cooped up in my room. I know it's chilly, but the air is so fresh, it's like I'm breathing. What if you catch a cold? Cliff said softly and sat down, snuggling closer to Liz. He asked again. What are you reading? A book on imperial history, because I'm not very educated. But in case I can be of any help to the Duke. Liz is on the family register of the Count of Sinclair, but she has been ignored as an illegitimate child and has not been taught any of the things that nobles are supposed to learn. She felt indebted to the Duke and Duchess for treating her like a daughter, and she always carried a book with her for fear of embarrassing them somewhere. Poor thing. Is it Liz's fault she was born out of wedlock? It's her father's fault for mistreating her. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who thought so. Cliff wrapped his arms around Liz's shoulders sympathetically and kissed her lightly on the head. You will never be someone else. But if you're reading it because you like it, then fine. But if you're reading it just because you want to be like someone else, then stop. All you have to do is enjoy yourself here, Liz. Cliff soothed her sweetly, but there was something bitter about her smile. And I think I know what she's feeling. Cliff, since you know everything, you'll think it's okay. But those who can't learn and don't have it don't think so. No matter how much Cliff embraces her, he can't make her feel better about herself. I think she should find her own way and study for herself. But Cliff is obsessed with her, and he doesn't want her to be on her own without him. So he's subtly flirting with her with those words. Meanwhile, I saw Declan approaching. If she wants to study hard, why bother her? Liz, do whatever you want to do. And if that's what makes you happy, I'm here to help. It was a different kind of comfort than Cliff's. But if I were Liz, I would have been more grateful to Declan. But it was a weak line for a second male lead to say, I'll give you everything. All you have to do is look at me, is the line a male lead would say in a situation like this. Declan, I agree that you're right. But that's why you can't beat Cliff. He's an obsessive, twisted male lead. Cliff would rather have Liz be the one who can't do anything without him. He can tolerate Liz being sweet to Declan, but he's really anxious about her doing anything on her own without needing him. Anyway, as I expected, 2 male leads gathered around Liz. But don't they have jobs? Do they have time to follow Liz around all day? Noblemen are supposed to have the virtue of not working. But they were just hanging around Liz in circles that made me wonder if they were playing too much. If it were me, I'd kick them out for being a nuisance. But Liz is so accepting of them. I don't know if she knows there's no point in chasing them away, or if she's just oblivious to the fact that they're clinging to her. Either way, it's not normal, that's for sure. Or maybe that level of obliviousness is a standard characteristic of the female lead of a Rafan novel? No, but wait. If Edith had married Declan, wouldn't it have been the beginning of the 4th volume of the novel I Refuse Your Obsession? And wouldn't she already be leaning towards Cliff? That's why we could have a storyline where Declan marries the villainess. But in hindsight, I can't tell to who Liz's heart is more attached. Maybe the 2 male leads really didn't notice, because even I, as a reader, was confused. Wow, Liz Sinclair, you've got some serious fishery management skills. I need to learn some of that stuff. Fishery is a term for how one dates several people at the same time without getting into a serious relationship. The fish here are assumed to be the people one is dating. If you're dating a lot of fish at the same time, then you obviously have good fishery management skills. If she doesn't know it, she's an innocent woman. If she does know it, she's a wicked woman. Of course, Liz is an innocent female lead. Declan. Why are you coming alone? Where's Edith? Declan stepped closer, and Liz greeted him warmly. But did you really need to bring my name up there, Liz? What's going on with her is none of my business. As expected, Declan's voice went dry in no time. But if Edith is bored by herself, I'm sure she'll be. Liz, you shouldn't care so much about her. She's just a hostage who's here for a while, and then will leave. Think of her as such. So that's what he thinks of me. Well, that's how it was in the original work. Declan viewed the marriage as a temporary disaster that would have to be endured. And it became a reality, before the 5th volume had even begun. That's enough observing for today. Feeling a chill around my neck, I turned and walked back to my room. Declan's words haunted me for the rest of the day. With a clang, the expensive teacup shattered. Have you lost your mind? Why would you want that woman? The voice, shrill as a scream, was hysterical. Damien Sinclair, who had been summoned by a scurrying maid, looked pitifully at his sister Layla, who was throwing a tantrum again. What's the matter this time? Layla snapped her head around at the bored tone of his voice and glared at him. Are you asking because you don't know? There are several things, and which one is it? Elise Rifter is married to Declan Ludwig. Oh, that one? The Sinclairs were not invited to the wedding. The reason given was that they wanted to keep the ceremony intimate and simple. But the Duke's closest confidants were in attendance, and Count Sinclair's pride was shattered. The fact that the bride is the daughter of the Count of Regelhof drives Layla almost mad. The Regelhofs were on bad terms with the Sinclairs, and Layla has had a crush on Declan for a long time. It made her sick to her stomach to see Edith acting so arrogant about being the soon-to-be daughter-in-law of House Ludwig. Why does it have to be Elise Rifter? Why? I suppose House Ludwig has a hobby of collecting unworthy women. Is that something to be laughed at? So what? You think that seat should have been yours? Leela's face flushed with anger and shame. You're the heir, and I'm the daughter, and I'm trying to find a good marriage to help my family in any way I can. And you're so nonchalant about it? Hearing this, Damien didn't seem all that offended. In fact, there was an oddly relaxed look on his face. That's why you're only a daughter, and that's why I'm the heir to this family, you fool. What? You go out to parties and come back talking about nothing. I come back with important stories of the social world. Layla slowly released her grip on the hem of her skirt. Have you heard any rumors about this marriage? Of course. Damien gestured to the shivering maids to clear away the broken teacups and sat down across from Layla. With brown hair that isn't quite as light as Liz's blonde, but still noticeable, and blue eyes that aren't quite as clear as Liz's, Leela has a fierce temper that belies her pretty appearance. The only people she can trust are her brothers, Damien and Anton, and her parents. Damien, her brother, is the one she relies on the most. What's the rumor? Just tell me already. Oh, look at your temper, Layla urged, but Damien only opened his mouth after leisurely sipping the freshly prepared tea the maids had brought. Do you think Duke Ludwig would trust Count Regelhof? You mean Duke Ludwig is a fool if he trusts such a snake? I'm saying this because Duke Ludwig is not stupid. But Count Regelhof controls the distribution of iron ore from the southern mines. And you do realize that iron ore is an important mineral for making weapons, right? Leela didn't answer, avoiding his gaze. Damien sighed heavily and shook his head, but he didn't want to criticize Layla. A woman is supposed to know how to look pretty and please her husband, and that's it. If anything, she will be a pain in the ass if she knows too much. Anyway, the right to distribute the iron ore is with Count Regelhof until the end of the year, which is why Duke Ludwig needs to keep Count Regelhof on a leash. A leash? There are rumors that Count Regelhof has shown an interest in Archduke Langston. Archduke Langston is the current emperor's uncle, and a man who disagrees with everything the emperor says. It is also rumored that he covets the throne. Isn't Archduke Langston an opponent of the emperor? Yes. So what if Count Regelhof, who has the iron ore distribution rights, joins the emperor's opposition? It would be very dangerous, wouldn't it? Layla nodded, understanding a little. But Count Regelhof is no ordinary cunning man. I wonder if he might have started the rumor on purpose that he's siding with Archduke Langston. What do you mean by that? That he started the rumor to get Duke Ludwig on his toes, and then offered him a marriage alliance to convince him of his innocence. Isn't it amazing how easy it is to become a duke's-in-law? What a despicable thing to do! Damien huffed and sipped his tea again. But Layla's scowl didn't lift. And what good news is that, anyway? It doesn't change the fact that Count Regelhof is now Duke Ludwig's in-law. Oh, my naive Leela. Do you think that just anyone can be a duke? Duke Ludwig is not that stupid. Stop talking in circles and just tell me. Damien smirked and leaned toward Layla. Of course, if Count Regelhof is willing to stoop to the level of a hostage for his daughter, he probably won't miss the chance to become an in-law with Duke Ludwig. What? Are you mocking me now? Well, Count Regelhof is greedy. He's been jealous of Duke Ludwig for a long time. Eventually, he's going to make a move before the year is out, and Elise Rifter is just a pawn to be used as a covering, and then discarded. That Count Regelhoff loves his daughter dearly is known to everyone in society. But few knew the truth. Damien knew something else besides the rumors about Duke Ludwig's relationship with Count Regelhoff. He still couldn't get over what he had witnessed while attending a party. Stupid bitch. You can't do anything right. I'm wrong, father. Count Regelhoff, who usually seemed to listen to everything his daughter said, slapped her on the cheek, and Edith, who usually stood tall and proud in front of her father, hunched her shoulders and begged for forgiveness. At first, he thought he was mistaken, but the conversation was unmistakable. How many times have I told you it's not Count Raverton, it's Count Averton? Get it right this time. You're going to approach Count Averton and get information on the cost of the Ankerton Bridge. Do you understand? Yes, father. I'm sorry. I won't make a mistake this time. After watching them for a while longer, Damien was convinced. Elise Rifter's image as a wicked woman was completely made up. Sensual and beautiful, Edith drew all the attention wherever she went, and there were plenty of men who coveted her. And she charmed them, digging up the information her father needed. No way. Count Regelhoff would die for that girl, Edith. Everyone thinks so, but this is solid information, and you don't go running your mouth. This is top secret, okay? Yup. Okay. Damien smirked as he watched his sister, who had been so impatient and sassy earlier, nod meekly. Then he added sweetly, "Hang in there, Leela. Declan Ludwig and Elise Rifter's marriage is only valid until this year, and next year, when the iron ore distribution rights will be in our family, I will give you a seat at Declan Ludwig's side." Suddenly, Layla's face lit up. Brother. So relax, then. No man likes a girl with a furrowed brow. Yes. Thanks, brother. Layla smiled happily as she thanked her brother, as if she had never thrown a teacup before. For a while, I was at peace as Philip showed me around the mansion and gave me a little insight into the Duchess's work that I would have to help with in the future. Perhaps my peace was enhanced by the fact that I was observing the three main characters, but trying not to actually interact with them. I also decided to shrug off Declan's unnecessary comments. It was the way the character was set up in the first place, so who am I to argue? The weather is so nice. Closing the book I was reading, I took a long stretch and yawned. Aside from my precarious situation, this moment was so peaceful. There hadn't been a day since I came of age that I hadn't worried about money. But now I don't have to worry about money. I don't have to worry about work. I don't have to worry about my parents or my brother. I feel like I'm really alive after I died. Suddenly, I wonder what happened after my death. What would my brother do after I fell down the stairs and died? My brother's eyes were not normal. They were the eyes of a complete gambling addict. He couldn't see reality in his eyes. He was always looking at the golden castle in the faraway fantasy and chasing it. When you lose that much money, you should realize that it's a mirage that will never be caught. But apparently, the gambling establishment makes sure someone wins every once in a while, so they don't lose customers like my brother. He probably took my wallet first. It would be nice if he could have hidden my corpse in a decent place, but there's a good chance he would have left it as it is. If time passes the same way between here and there, my brother would have been caught by now. The old multi-family house I lived in didn't have CCTV, but across the street from it was a luxury apartment complex. There's no way my brother wouldn't have been captured on CCTV at the entrance to the complex. I'd rather he was caught, punished severely, and come to his senses. I hope so. Not out of revenge, but because I want him to at least live up to his part as a human being. I wonder if Mom and Dad were sad? My parents, who farmed in the countryside, were responsible for our clothing, feeding, and taking us to the doctor until we were out of high school. but they were basically not that interested in their children. They didn't want to know about how well I or my brother were studying, what our friendships were like, what our dreams were, or what our problems were. And when they found out he was gambling and borrowing my money, they didn't care. Maybe they thought it was just a nuisance, but he's still human, so at least they could pretend to be sad. I'd rather they not be sad. If they loved their children so much that they lost the will to live after my death, that would be more of a headache. Mom and Dad probably took a few days to move on. They would have cared more about my brother than about me. Besides my family, I thought about my coworkers and my ex-boyfriend. But I didn't really have much of an emotional connection. They would have been surprised by my death, but they would have gotten over it quickly. I felt a little lonely thinking about how no one would have cared about Choi Min-ji's absence, but it was a good thing for the people left behind. Okay, that's it. With that thought, I decided to stop worrying about the people left behind in my previous life. I sighed, and then Anna told me that the Duchess was looking for me. Let's focus. Now is the time to worry about the people in my current life, not the people in my previous life. Feeling a little sentimental about my previous life, I braced myself and stood up. The Duchess received my greeting as graciously as if seeing a true daughter-in-law, and in a generous voice, she broke the good news. Edith, I have summoned the dressmakers as you requested the other day. They'll be here tomorrow morning, so if you want to order anything, you might want to think about it. Wow, already? Thanks for the favor. You're welcome. Thanks to you, Liz and I will finally be able to match dresses after a long time. After all, you can't leave out the female lead, Liz. Oh, come to think of it, wasn't this an episode in the original story? I called the dressmakers to get my dresses altered, but in the original story, Edith calls to order expensive dresses. And then Liz is called in, and it's like a battle of taste between Edith and Liz. Wow, that's creepy. Whatever my intentions were, the original plot is still going strong, isn't it? I actually had goosebumps on my arms. I asked to call the dressmakers without much thought, but that's the flow of the original story. What happened in this episode? I pieced together my hazy memories. I think they each order a design of the dress they want to wear. Liz for something that suits her, and Edith trying to outdo Liz with a dress that has lots of embellishments. There's no way a dress that's too much can be good, and when Liz compliments her on her dress, Edith is furious, accusing the dressmakers of poor workmanship. This leads to an argument with Declan, who overhears and then criticizes her. Well, I'm not buying a new dress, so the outcome would be completely different. I just kind of shrugged it off. I spent the rest of the day picking out the dresses to drop off at the dressmaker, and figuring out where and how to fix them. The long-awaited next day. Miss, there's someone from the boutique to see you in the Duchess parlor. Oh, finally. Thank you, Anna. I followed Anna into the Duchess parlor, feeling overjoyed. Liz was already seated in the parlor. Thank you for inviting me, Mother. Hello, Miss Liz. Oh, hello. Liz jumped to her feet, pleased that I had greeted her first. It's been a while since I've seen her, and she's still dazzlingly beautiful. I'm going to have to get used to it soon, but I think I'm going to be swooning every time I see her beauty. I almost made a silly face again, but managed to keep it together with an awkward smile. Hello, I'm Emily Royale of Royale's Boutique, and I'm honored to be here. Emily, the owner of the boutique, has soft brown hair and appears to be in her early 40s. She brought with her a stack of colorful fabrics and lace, as well as a style book full of various designs. Shall we start with the Duchess? Mrs. Royale took out a style book for older ladies and opened it in front of the Duchess. After flipping through a few pages, the Duchess looked up and smiled. As I get older, I seem to end up picking the same designs every time. So why don't you guys pick one for me this time? Asked the Duchess, looking back at me and Liz. What a surprise. This is an unexpected situation. Why are you giving me a test without warning? A cold sweat ran down my spine. I know what will happen. Either she will prefer Liz's design choice over mine, or she will accept both with Liz's design getting more compliments. I'm on pins and needles, but Liz seems rather pleased. Are you sure I can do this? Of course, Liz. With that, we each had exactly the same style book in front of us. I calmly looked through the style book, sweating profusely. This test was clearly stacked against me. Liz has lived in this house for 5 years, so she has a good idea of the Duchess' tastes. And I've been in this world for less than 2 weeks. I had no idea my style battle episode with Liz would play out like this. The flow of the original was much stronger than I expected. I'm thinking about this design. I think it would look very elegant on you. Liz picked out a blue silk dress. Mrs. Ruyle quickly took the sample fabric and draped it over the Duchess's shoulders, cooing that it was an excellent choice. Not only that, but she thought it would look very good on the Duchess with a set of pearl earrings and a necklace, as illustrated in the style book. That's a very good choice. With her wheat-colored hair, amber eyes, and very fair skin, the Duchess would look good in any color, but blue seems to be the closest to perfect. You've chosen very well, Miss Liz. It's the latest design from our boutique. The silk is also the finest available to the imperial family. Mrs. Ruyle was pleased and praised Liz's discernment. And which one did Edith choose? As Liz's buoyant mood subsided slightly, the Duchess' gaze shifted to me. Is this also the flow of the original? I laid out a picture of a dress with a more ornate design that the original Edith might have chosen. Of course, no matter what I chose, I think the Duchess would prefer the blue dress Liz chose, but the dress Miss Liz picked out would be perfect for you. But I think something like this would be fine for the occasional day when you want to change up your mood. I pointed to a dress of brown silk. The coppery, lustrous brown silk was delicately vine-embroidered with gold thread, and a dark purple underdress peeked out from the gap in the robe. The anglaise, lace or ruffles under the elbow-length sleeves, and trim of the robe were the same shade of crimson as the underdress. To my 21st century eyes, it looked like something a duchess would wear with grace and class, but I doubt anyone else would. Lady Regelhoff, you have a great eye. I don't know many people who can appreciate the beauty of these 2 color combinations. The dress is beautiful, but don't you think it's a little too flashy for me? Again, the Duchess looked a little embarrassed and leaned back. However, as you get older, you need to wear fancy clothes to look more beautiful. I tried to put on a good-natured expression and replied, First of all, Mrs. Ruyle, I'm not a young lady of Regelhoff anymore. So if you don't feel comfortable calling me Madame Ludwig, please just call me Miss Edith. Oh my mistake. Ho ho. And mother, this dress may look a bit fancy, but it fits in with the genteel Ludwig. And besides, you have the beauty and class to wear it. The die was cast. The Duchess was embarrassed by my answer, but said she would order the 2 dresses Liz and I had recommended. I had no intention of winning this showdown anyway. Beating the female lead would only earn me a few death points, of course. If I lost, I'd get a backlash, but I encouraged her to try this design as a change of mood just in case. Sometimes a dress is just a change of mood, so why not be a little flashy? Anyway, once the Duchess' dress selection was over, it was time for Liz's. I'm just here to look around. I'm really fine with anything. The dresses I have are enough. Knowing the price of the dress, Liz waved it away. Of course, someone with your beauty would be lauded as avant-garde fashion, even if you wore a blanket. After all, fashion is all about the face. There will be many tea parties soon, so you'll need a dress with a bright design. Shrugging off Liz's futile protests, the Duchess began to flip through the style book, looking for a dress that would suit her, and when she found one, Mrs. Royale pulled out the fabric and held it up to Liz. "How about this one, Liz? The floral print would be perfect for a spring tea party. Oh, and this one too. The pale blue color and pink ribbon would look really good on you." I watched from the side as the Duchess excitedly picked through the pictures of dresses. And then I also pointed without me realizing it. "This one too. This kind of pink doesn't look good on just anyone. But Miss Liz, with her fair skin and strawberry milk-colored cheeks, would look really good in this." "Oh, I see." I love Edith's eyes. "How about this white empire dress? I think that would make her look too young. Something white and simple would be better." I pointed to a Greek robe-style dress. "Liz would really look like a goddess in this." With the beautiful model in front of us, the Duchess and I racked our brains for a while longer, as there were so many things we wanted to do with her. It wasn't that we couldn't decide, it was that we couldn't decide what to give up. Liz could only smile embarrassedly beside me. "Huh? Well, then, I guess I'll just have to get 5 dresses like this." It was a hard decision, Mother. I know. Next time I call the boutique, I'll make sure to do it much earlier than the season. Mrs. Royale checked out the dresses for Liz, looking pleased as punch. Then it was my turn. "Choose a design you like too, Edith." "Oh, I didn't call the boutique to order a new dress." Huh. Rule number 1 of survival for the possessed villainess in a Rofen novel: reverse the image. In the future, I would spend all the money I had, but for now, I needed to reverse my image. So instead of being the lady of extravagance ordering expensive new dresses, I would be the frugal one, although this is not frugal at all who altered the ones I had. I winked at Anna, and she, with the help of a few maids, brought in the 10 dresses I'd picked out that morning. "I'm going to have these dresses altered, Mrs. Royale." "Yes. By any chance, you don't do alterations?" "Oh, of course we do, but I'd like to know how you'd like them altered. I'll explain that to you now." I went in front of the maid as she unfolded the dress and explained to her what needed to be fixed, one by one. "I'd like you to cover the chest part of the dress as a whole. It's a bit too exposed and uncomfortable. Please cover it like this." "Ho ho, you have much different tastes than you used to." "Let's say so. And I'd like you to take off all the jewelry on these dresses. But the labor alone to embroider those diamond beads must have cost a fortune. That's why I've kept some really elaborate dresses, so please just take these ones off." "Oh, yes, I'll do that." Honestly, I felt good inside, because I knew that if I could just take off the jewelry on the dresses, I'd be able to secure my slush fund. Having completed the alteration orders for 10 dresses in this manner, I checked once more to make sure Mrs. Royale had written them down thoroughly, and sat down. "But, Edith, since someone from the boutique is here, why don't you order a new dress as well? I can barely wear all the dresses I brought with me, as there are so many, so I'll have to order a new one for next year." "Thank you for your concern, Mother. In fact, from this day forward, I was deliberately avoiding the title Duchess and calling her mother all the time, trying to establish an inner closeness with her. I could feel the Duchess' awkwardness, but titles are harder to change later in a marriage, if you don't establish them early on. Anyway, I stood up, praying that this was a success. I guess Liz is in a good mood." Liz pressed her lips together and tried to hold back a smile. Her eyes were glued to the style book, and I could tell she was excited about her new dress. She said she only came to see, but she must be happy to have a new dress. She can't even express her wishes with her own mouth, poor thing. I returned to my room with a light heart, hoping that I had managed to win Liz's favor. 3 days after the wedding, the Duchess began to assign me tasks. When I arrived at the Duchess' office, I was greeted by none other than Liz. "Welcome, Miss Edith." She smiled, her face as cheerful as ever. "Good morning, Miss Liz. I see you're here early." I returned her greeting with a smile. Knowing the original story, I wasn't surprised to see Liz in the Duchess's office, because I am not the real Edith. How can you entrust the family's documents to someone who is not a family member of this house, not a noble, and hasn't even learned anything either? It was a valid question, but since Liz was already being treated like a daughter of House Ludwig, the Duchess found Edith's complaint quite offensive. Therefore, I decided to respond with a wry smile. "I'm afraid I'm not very good at this, so Miss Liz will have to teach me a lot. I'm only good enough to run errands for the Duchess. I don't think Mother would have just anyone by her side, so let's get along and have fun." Liz led me to a place to sit and work, while the Duchess looked at us with a happy face. She seemed pleased that we were getting along so well. Ink and pens, a document tray, and a stack of papers were placed on my desk. Even in this world, I feel like I'm working for a company. Why do Koreans make people work even in Rofan novels? I sighed as I remembered my first day at work. But one of the life wisdoms I learned in my previous life is that it never hurts to learn something. Most likely, I'll end up running away at night, but you never know. Declan might turn around and take me down to the mansion. If he does, I might be able to put what I've learned to good use. "Edith." "Yes, Mother." "That bundle of papers I gave you is probably not organized at all. They're probably all mixed up, and I need you to organize them by date." "Do I just need to organize them by date, or do I need to categorize them by client or by item?" "I'd appreciate it if you organized them that way." "Okay." It was such a simple task that I was embarrassed to admit I was nervous. I picked up a few stacks of papers and started going through them one by one. It's a problem because there's a lot, but the work isn't difficult. Although some of the papers were handwritten and took a while to decipher, I managed to sort through them with relative ease. Wow, Edith has a good head on her shoulders. That's neat. I even got a compliment from the Duchess, who checked out some of the papers I had organized and stacked. Great. That's how you changed the original story. I smiled sheepishly, then made eye contact with Liz and smiled again. She smiled back. Just like that, the morning went by quickly. Even if I did work, it was only for 2 or 3 hours at most, which was a bit disappointing for a Korean worker who is used to working overtime. "Thank you for today. Please take care of me tomorrow as well." As I walked out of the Duchess' office, humming happily to myself, Liz called out to me from behind. "Excuse me, Miss Edith." "Yes." "Well, if you're not too busy, why don't you come over for tea this afternoon?" A shy flush came to Liz's cheeks. She added, "I can't help it if you're busy." "I'll come. Thank you for inviting me." I smiled, clasping my hands together as if I were really happy. To be honest, I didn't want to get involved with the main characters. But if I refused, I could be labeled as a wicked woman for breaking Liz's heart. "What time can I come?" "We will have tea at 3:30 p.m. on the balcony of the Great Hall." The word "we" rang oddly in my ears. Liz may have used it subconsciously, but it felt like she was drawing a line between them and me. I also felt a little creeped out that it was the same balcony where I saw them last time. But how dare an extra who wants to get out of the villain role against the female lead's words? It's a beautiful day, and I'm sure the courtyard is even more beautiful, so we'll be there by 3:30. Sure. See you then? I waved at Liz, my face as cheerful as ever, and turned away. And the first thing I thought of was the original story. Did the original story have a tea invitation episode? There are so many tea parties in Rofan novels that I'm not sure which one this is. Well, we'll see. You can't avoid all the original episodes. I think I don't have to think too hard about it, as long as I don't do the same evil deeds that Edith did in the original story. But then something surprising happened. "Follow me." "Declan?" It was a little after 3 p.m. And Declan was in my room, asking me to follow him. It was the first time I'd spoken to him since the wedding. What's going on? I have an appointment with Miss Liz in a few minutes. I'm going there. Apparently, Liz must have sent him to see me first. I could imagine Liz's figure forcibly pushing Declan's back as he grumbled. Why do I have to escort her? Maybe today's tea time invitation was planned to somehow make things better between me and Declan. Liz is having a hard time because of me and Declan. I pulled on a light shawl and followed Declan along. Walking ahead, it was obvious he'd never look back at me, so I enjoyed looking at his back. Kaya, look at his shoulders. Is he a former swimmer? Ugh, that waist. I wish I could do a back hug. But neither his broad shoulders nor his chiseled waist could compare to his toned hips and firm thighs. I've never been so enthralled by a man's body before. It's amazing. Any woman in her right mind would be swooning if she had a man like this as a husband. But don't worry. I'm just going to admire him with only my eyes. It's okay for Liz to have him. I'll just admire him with my eyes, and that's it. After walking for quite a while in such a happy mood, I was already at the entrance of the Great Hall. Declan suddenly turned around. I was just admiring his butt, so when he turned around, my gaze landed on an embarrassing spot. Mama! Involuntarily calling out to my mother, I raised my gaze in surprise. Sure enough, Declan was looking down at me with a scowl on his face. I warn you in advance. Alas, a warning. Liz is like family to me. She means a lot more to me than you do. So watch your language around her. That's the warning? Now that I've listened to it, I'm feeling a little queasy. What did I do? When I read the original story, I knew that Declan snapped at Edith. But now that I am in Edith's shoes, I feel bad even though I already know everything. Wow. You're hurting me like this? A female comedian once said that you have to tell a rude man straight up, you're hurting me. But there's no way our obsessive second male lead is going to let this sarcasm go unchallenged. What do you have to be hurt about? Didn't you come prepared? I'm a human too. A human? Not a snake? You are very polite, Declan. Shall I treat Miss Liz according to the manners of the Duke's son? Only then did Declan's mouth shut. Even though I had promised myself not to expect anything from this man, my heart still ached. How hard it must have been for the original Edith who loved Declan. I think he wanted to ruin my mood and make me a meaner woman. And that's too bad, because I'm not the kind of girl who gets rattled that easily. What? Of course, the fact that I was hurt is another matter. I walked past Declan's side without hearing his response and headed toward the balcony of the Great Hall. I should smile, but the corners of my mouth wouldn't budge. The clueless Liz spotted me, smiled broadly, and waved. Miss Edith, over here. Wow, what a dazzling sight, as expected from the female lead. At the sight of Liz's sunshiny smile, my gloomy mood dissipated, as if it had been sterilized. Miss Liz, thank you for inviting me to tea. Thank you for coming, Miss Edith. Well, we're the same age, and we're always together. So why don't we just call each other by our first names? Really? Is that okay? Of course. Cliff was already seated at the table, and Declan, who had followed behind me, took a seat with a grim expression on his face. Liz, the hostess of the event, poured tea into the guests' cups and briefly explained the refreshments for the day. I sipped my tea as Cliff and Declan raised their cups. I miss coffee, but this isn't bad. Liz's tea was fragrant and somewhat sweet, with a clean aftertaste, just like the tea served at the Duchy of Ludwig. While I was admiring the flavor, Cliff, sitting across from me, made eye contact with me. My heart skipped a beat because he was the second most handsome man I had ever seen. You seem to be adjusting well to life here. I smiled nonchalantly, though I was very curious as to why he said that out of the blue. It's because everyone in the Ludwig family has been so considerate of me, I suppose. But isn't it too soon to be helping the Duchess with her work already? You're newlyweds. Why don't you take a trip with Declan? At that, Declan's eyes immediately turned vicious. Aha! You're trying to use me to get him away from Liz, aren't you? I had just witnessed a sibling love affair over Liz. It's like a shrimp caught in a whale fight. I don't know. Declan seems to be really busy. Declan's busy? He hasn't been doing much lately. Declan snorted and shot back. Maybe you should get out and inspect the estate. It's almost winter. I suppose so. Liz, do you want to come with me on the estate inspection? You said you wanted to try traveling before. Gosh, it's clear that the male lead is one step ahead of the second male lead. Liz was the only one who looked flustered. Oh, why are you putting her in such a difficult situation? Liz, you don't have to mind about what my brother says. But I'm afraid that if I'm not here, you're going to put her in a more difficult situation. Liz's gaze flicked to me for a moment, then away. I could tell that Declan's love for Liz was nothing more than gossipy speculation. It's a little far-fetched, but you could argue that they're just getting along like good siblings. At least, that's how it is when he and Cliff are hanging around Liz. But what happens if Cliff leaves to inspect the estate and Declan doesn't leave Liz's side? Even under the same circumstances, they would be seen as a pair in an instant. Rumors will soon spread that Declan is in love with Liz, and he hasn't gotten over her, even as a married man. As for Liz, it would be even worse. Wow, even though you're only a year older, you have a different level of thinking. I felt like a bit of a spectator. In the meantime, the refreshments Liz had laid out were really good, and I ate in Claire instead of popcorn and watched the sibling fight. Cliff laughed softly at my nonchalance and passed the ball to me. So, what do you think, Miss Edith? Yes? Your opinion about me being the only one away from the mansion. That is, the situation where Liz, Declan, and you will be the only ones to stay. Unlike Cliff, who was grinning from ear to ear, Declan and Liz's faces hardened. However, rather than feeling sorry for Declan, I became a little annoyed with Cliff's behavior for getting me into this fight. I mean, I know Declan loves Liz. I know he was forced to marry me. And I know I'm in no position to be loved by Declan. But to play around with a person on your palm is kind of... So in spite of myself, I replied in a slightly snarky tone. I don't care. What? Well, it's your duty as the heir, Cliff, to inspect the estate. So if you want to go, you go. Who am I to tell you to go or not to go? I don't mean that, but to give you my honest opinion about taking Miss Liz with you. I think it would be a bit of a stretch. A long carriage trip is quite an undertaking, and I think it would be a bit much to ask her to do it when she's not even your wife. The answer was completely unexpected, and both Cliff and Declan's expressions changed at once. Cliff was still smiling, but he looked a little cold, and Declan looked a little surprised. And Liz looked like, I expected Liz to be embarrassed to be caught in the middle of a sibling fight. But she had her head down and was smiling faintly. Something's off. I don't know why it felt weird. She should be happy to be out of an embarrassing situation thanks to my defense. But somehow, it didn't seem like the kind of reaction I'd expect from a character named Liz. Cliff, do you really need to go on an estate inspection now? But when she looked up again, the smile on her face was gone, replaced by a worried expression that only Liz could have worn. Did I see it wrong? Well, maybe I did. The corners of Liz's mouth were upturned, giving the impression that she was always smiling. No, I'm just saying, Cliff reassured Liz with a real smile, not the fake one he'd been giving me. Then he looked back at me and smiled brightly. I see you have a very generous heart. This guy is an asshole to the core. Compared to Declan, who openly dislikes me, Cliff is more of an asshole for pretending to be mature, relaxed, and friendly. I'm trying to be generous, even at this moment. Do you think you're the only one who can do it? I can do it too. I turned to face Cliff and smiled broadly. Oddly enough, I was a little scared that Declan was staring at me too. Declan, you see, I'm on your side, so don't kill me, even if you feel bad. Okay? With that selfishness, I winked at Declan. He is a handsome man, despite his frown. Returning to my room after a somewhat rambunctious tea time, I sat down at my desk and pondered the original version of this story. I refuse your obsession. I'd better get Edith's dead flags organized. The rules of survival for a possessed villain in AA, that's too long. I'll just call it the survival rules from now on. Anyway, all of the possessed characters come up with a plan to organize and avoid the dead flags by remembering the original story. So I had to organize Edith's evil deeds in the original story and figure out how to avoid them. I took out a piece of paper and wrote down each of Liz and Edith's conflicts in I refuse your obsession. So, I guess I avoided poisoning the tea and releasing the snake in Liz's room because I didn't bring Sophia with me, right? Sophia is quick and precise when Edith gives her instructions. In that sense, Sophia is a greater villain than Edith. In a way, she's a better villain than Edith. Just as Kim Dong-il's one girlfriend is a better detective than him, who can prepare everything he asks her to prepare in the shortest possible time. Kim Dong-il is the Korean name of Hajime Kindaichi, the main character of the Japanese manga, the Kindaichi Case Files, which is also popular in Korea. Once again, it was a good move to leave Sophia behind. But that wasn't the only attempt Edith made to frame or kill Liz. Edith goes to all sorts of parties and gossips about Liz, pours hot water over her head while she's walking in the garden, gives her poisoned embroidery needles, and even puts a little poison in the cake she sends her and eats it herself. Ah, poisonous bitch. Edith tries to frame Liz as the poisoner by eating the poison herself, but I don't have the courage to swallow the poison myself. I don't want to get sick. I've been sick enough in my previous life. I'm sure there are more, but I can't remember. If more came to mind, I should write them down. I rewrote it in words that only I would recognize, so that if it was ever found, it wouldn't be seen as evidence of a plot to harm Liz. Right living habits. Avoid socializing for a while. Don't go to parties and run your mouth. Don't add too much sugar to your tea. Don't put poison in your tea. Don't go to bed with the windows closed because bugs are coming in. Don't release poisonous snakes. Don't throw trash out the window. Don't pour tea over Lisa's. Head hygiene matters for me and for others. Don't eat poisoned cake. Don't give something poisoned to Liz. Be grateful for what you have. Never covet Declan. For now, I'll settle for this. No matter how much I rack my brain, I can't remember much more than this right now. I read over what I'd written once more, nodding my head in confirmation, before stopping at the last sentence. I should be grateful for what I have. Do not covet Declan. For some reason, I remember his eyes looking at me in a subtle way. His eyes were like a cloudy day. I don't know what he was thinking. How beautiful it would be if those gray eyes looked lovingly at me. If only they would look at me. Gee, I can't even imagine. I could only see him looking at me with disdain, so I couldn't imagine him looking at me with love in his eyes. It's so frustrating that it's kind of funny. It's a good thing. What am I supposed to do with imagining something like that? I chuckled to myself and circled the "be grateful for what you have" line again and again. Declan? What are you doing there? The quiet atmosphere stirred slightly. Liz. What's wrong? Declan, who had been lost in thought on the balcony overlooking the moonlit garden, smiled faintly as he saw Liz approaching, looking like she had come from the moon. "No, nothing." "Nothing? Is it because of that fight you had with Cliff earlier?" "Fight with Cliff? Me?" "I mean, about the estate inspection." Liz trailed off, unable to say more. Suddenly Declan remembered how Cliff had taunted him earlier. Alas, that was nothing. Then what is it? Declan met Liz's eyes, looking at him with concern. In the past, he used to love the way Liz looked at him with concern, and sometimes he'd even purposely pretend to be in a serious mood, just to be in her line of sight. "I still like the way she looks at me, but I'm not doing anything stupid to intentionally worry her. It's not like I have anything major to worry about, just nagging thoughts about that woman since tea time earlier. Something's bothering me. You're suffering alone again. Tell me, maybe there's something I can do to help." "It's not even worth your time." Declan smiled, but Liz, ever the shrewd one, quickly realized something. "Is this about Edith?" Instead of answering, Declan let out a long sigh. "Why Edith? Do you still hate her that much?" Liz asked again. "She keeps bugging me." "Does she?" "Edith never even talks about you." Declan's brow creased. "She doesn't talk about me at all. I've never heard Edith talk about you." And the Duchess gave me a complicated look when she said she hadn't heard of it either. "Huh." He laughed, feeling a little absurd. "Why? Is it because you want to talk to her?" "Who wants to talk to such a woman? She's a snake's offspring. Right now, she's just lying flat on the floor, waiting for everyone to let their guard down. And when the time comes, she's sure to show her fangs. I don't even want to look at her, let alone talk to her." "Wow, you're hurting me like this." "I'm a human too." I don't know why her words kept coming back to me. No way. She got hurt by something like that. We both knew it was an arranged marriage. She was the brave one who set foot in House Ludwig alone because she had something to gain, knowing that she'd be ignored and suspected. Such a woman can't be hurt by a few harsh words. Yeah, I'm sure she was just pretending to be hurt so she could stab me. She is the same woman who stood up to Cliff Ludwig without fear. But why did she take my side in that fight? Even if it is no secret that he is in love with Liz, he can't just say it in front of the bride he just married. Especially when that bride is the one who tried to take his side. So he's angry at Cliff for not being more forthcoming about his feelings for Liz. To his surprise, the woman who had just been hurt by him was snapping at Cliff, not him. That's too bad, because I'm not the kind of girl who gets rattled that easily. As Edith snorted, she really didn't seem to mind the petty criticism. Instead, she seemed more angry at the rude person, and her response was uncharacteristically blunt. Honestly, it's kind of refreshing. No. Why am I thinking this? Declan shook his head, as if to clear the image of Edith winking at him, then quickly changed the subject. "Oh, by the way, I heard you ordered new dresses the other day. My mother loves to dress you up in new clothes." "Well, I have a lot of dresses, and I feel so sorry for her every time." "What do you have to be sorry about?" "It's my mother's hobby, and she's always told us it's no fun raising two boys. She can finally do her hobby, think of it that way, and help her out." The Duchess, who has only raised two blunt sons, has always envied the family with a daughter. Her husband and son are all knights, and she sometimes became depressed when all three were late due to training. But when the Duchess brought in Liz, who had been harassed for being the illegitimate daughter of the Count of Sinclair, she became much brighter. It was all thanks to Liz's presence. No wonder the Duchess treated her kindly like her own daughter. In that case, buying Edith's dress would have made the Duchess happier. Huh? What's that supposed to mean? Arched an eyebrow, Liz gave a small sigh. Actually, it was Edith who asked for someone from the boutique that day. I take it she was planning to rake in the duchy's fortune as soon as she got married? No. That day, Edith only asked that the dress she brought be altered. What? Declan was confused for a moment. If the woman known for her extravagance had called in the dressmaker, she would have ordered several very expensive dresses. She is famous for never wearing a dress she has worn even once. But why would she have it altered? The Duchess suggested that since she had called the dressmaker, she might as well have a new dress. But she refused, saying that she couldn't even wear all the dresses she had brought with her. Does that mean she embarrassed my mother in front of the dressmaker? Well, no. I don't think so, but I did think that the Duchess was a little upset. I think she wanted to buy Edith something nice. Declan snorted in disbelief. She's got a way of putting people down. She is indeed the daughter of that snake man. I'm sure Edith didn't mean that. She was so excited when choosing the Duchess's dress and mine. Liz tried to put her arms around Edith, but Declan's glare was uncharacteristically clear and harsh. I guess she's too much of a prude to entrust her dress to the dressmaker. But she was okay with entrusting yours and my mother's? How arrogant. Declan gritted his teeth. Then he remembered that what Edith had worn today hadn't bothered him so much. He couldn't remember what it was, but somehow, unlike that immodest dress at the wedding, it seemed to barely show her chest. If she's showing her chest, I can't help but notice because I hate it even more. Declan frowned whenever Edith unabashedly bared her skin. Does she even realize what men are saying about her? If I could lick Elise Rifter from head to toe, I would. Ah, Edith, yes. With that yummy-looking skin. I wonder if there's a man out there who could stand to have her naked body in front of him. Ha ha ha. Declan could hear the giggling voices of men who were just as vulgar as she was. Suddenly, he remembered his wedding day when Edith showed off her voluptuous breasts. She had fallen asleep in the bathtub alone, and her slender, pure white, naked body. His throat went dry for some reason, but Declan swallowed hard, quelling any urges that might have been rising in him. Did she play some kind of weird prank on you, like picking out a grotesque dress for you? No, my dress was picked out by the Duchess and Edith together. Don't hate Edith so much, Declan. I don't hate her. I'm just wary of her. Declan patted Liz on the shoulder, reassuring her that she was not the reason Edith was treated as such. And at the same time, in his heart, he was disgusted with Edith for looking down on House Ludwig's standards. But another part of him wondered if the noble atmosphere of Rueil's boutique might not suit her extravagant tastes. I'll have to find her another boutique to satisfy her extraordinary tastes. Of course, it was only for the sake of House Ludwig's dignity. He didn't want her to go around saying, I couldn't even bring myself to ask for a dressmaker because it wasn't up to my standards. Today, as I was thinking about the original story and adding and subtracting items to my right living habits list, I suddenly realized something important. In order to be grateful for what you have, you need to be able to fully enjoy it. So let's give myself a little luxury. I have a lot of money in my pocket. When I got married, in addition to jewelry and art, I had cash from the Regelhoff family as a dowry, because the Duke of Ludwig didn't take it and gave it to me as pocket money. The unit of currency in this world is the senna, and I have 5 million sennas. I don't know the exact exchange rate, but it seems to be around 50 million won. 50 million won! Where should I spend this money? It's the first time I've ever had to think about something like this. I realized once again that this was a fantasy world, but I don't know what to spend it on. Dresses? No. I have a pile of dresses, and I don't have anywhere to wear them. Jewelry and accessories? No. Who needs jewelry and accessories when you don't have anywhere to go out in a dress? In 21st century South Korea, I would have plenty of places to spend my money. I could eat the finest food whenever I wanted, could read books in the library at home, no dresses or jewelry needed, and could buy essential supplies all at once on a semi-annual basis. But here, even if I wanted to spend it, I couldn't really find anything to spend it on. This is the first time I'm nervous because I have nowhere to spend my money on. I was shaking my crossed legs in frustration when Anna walked up and whispered to me, "Miss, we are almost out of your perfume and rouge. Would you like me to call a perfumer and a cosmetics merchant?" "Oh, yes." Good. After all, Anna is an essential character in the story. I'll try some luxury cosmetics. I remember my coworkers from my past life who wore niche perfumes or expensive imported cosmetics. Trying to look like them, I never touched up my makeup in public. I wasn't ashamed of my road shop makeup, but I was embarrassed to admit that I was scraping the bottom of my compacts with all the transferred text and stickers peeling off. I used to put my lipstick on in the bathroom stall, but now that I think about it, I don't know why I was so ashamed of it. Maybe I was subconsciously thinking that it would show that I was unloved. A person with high self-esteem would have been rather proud, saying, "I'm this frugal." I smiled bitterly and waited for the people Anna would call. First, she called in the perfumer. He carefully sniffed the scent of my old perfume and nodded. "It's a fine rose perfume with Ashley roses. Shall I make it like this again this time?" "Do you have more than one type of rose perfume?" "Of course, but the most common is the one with titania roses. It's rich, heavy, and the first thing that comes to mind when you think of rose perfume. But it's a little too heavy for young people." "How much does that cost?" "It's relatively cheap, about 20,000 senna for a small bottle." "Huh. Wait a minute. Doesn't 20,000 senna mean 200,000 won? I think that small bottle is less than 50 mal, but that's 200,000 won? That's my entire month's transportation, communication, and utility bills." "Ha ha ha, I see. What about the others?" "There's a type of rose that a lot of young people are looking for, the Ashley rose. It's a light, fresh rose scent with a hint of grass, and the one you've been wearing is a very fine perfume made with Ashley roses, a type of wild raspberry, and a hint of longan incense. It sounds expensive just from the description." "How much does this cost?" "Well, it depends on the proportions, but if I were to make it similar to your old perfume, it would probably cost between 50,000 and 70,000 sennas for a small bottle of—" "What? Why did the price suddenly double or triple?" 500,000 won is way more than my food budget for a month in my previous life. The most expensive perfumes are those that use Tess roses or Nathaniel roses one, which cost over 100,000 sennas for a small bottle. One, if you're wondering what kind of rose Nathaniel rose is, it doesn't exist in the world. I think it's just the author's fantasy. So, a 50 ml bottle of perfume costs over 1,000,000 won? Am I miscalculating the exchange rate between the won and the senna? Why is it so expensive? As I clench my molars to keep my mouth from gaping, the perfumer spoke again. "Why don't you try the Nathaniel rose this time? It has a slightly deeper scent than the Ashley rose." "Oh, no. I'll stick with my old one. I don't want a sudden change in scent." Haha. "Well, you're still at the age where you like light, fresh scents, so I'll make it similar to your old one," Anna advised from the side. "How about a little bit of Nathaniel rose mixed in with the Ashley rose?" You may like the scent you're familiar with, but since you're married, I think it would be better to have a deeper scent." I agree with Anna, but I'm nervous about how expensive it will be. As the daughter-in-law of the Ludwig family, I can't say no just because it's expensive. "Well, I suppose so, but mix a little bit of that expensive rose. Just a little bit." "That's a good compromise then. It's about 80,000 sennas for a small bottle." 80,000 sennas? My hands tremble in disbelief. I have 5 million sennas in my pocket, but I feel like I'm sinning against Choi Min-ji from my previous life by paying 800,000 won for a small perfume. As if sensing my frustration, Anna advised me again, since you've been wearing a similar perfume anyway. Why don't you order a larger bottle, and the price will be much lower? That's right. If you make it in a big bottle, it'll be, 130,000 senas. A large bottle looks to be roughly 100 ml, so that's 65,000 senas for 50 ml. Can't you do it for 120,000 senas? What? That would leave me with nothing. Then 125,000 senas. Is there a law that says aristocrats shouldn't haggle over prices, so that merchants can rob them as much as they want? Trying to maintain my regal demeanor, I smiled softly at the perfumer. I even added an excuse. It's just that I don't want to hear that I'm a bad daughter-in-law who spent too much money as soon as I got married. On the contrary, I will definitely call you again next time. Ha ha ha, that's a pretty good deal with the frugal daughter-in-law of the Ludwig family. I can't win, so I'll take your word for it and give it to you for 125,000 senas. Thank you. For the first time in my life, I had successfully negotiated a price. I felt a surge of confidence, but the ordeal was not over. After the perfumer left, a cosmetics merchant came by. I need a rouge for my lady. Do you have a color similar to this one? Anna asked, opening the jar of rouge I was using and showing it to him. The cosmetics merchant took a closer look and opened the bag he had brought with him. Oh, it's from Melrose, and that's a good product. But there are also new products from Lance that are all the rage. He pulled out a few porcelain jars. The jade-colored ones from Melrose were pretty, but the pink ones from Lance were even prettier. It even has a ribbon on the lid. The colors are similar, but I've heard that the Lance ones are more pigmented. I think you'll like these in addition to the colors you already have. They're all really pretty. By the way, how much do these cost? 8,000 senas for the Melrose one and 10,000 senas for the Lance one. I think I can bring the price down further if I subtract the cost of the porcelain jars. The pink rouge jar was really, really pretty, but I turned my head away with tears in my eyes. I'll just stick with what I have. I see. Do you need a puff? There are also hand mirrors and hairbrushes. I tried to wave away the need, but Anna insisted that I needed a brush to apply the rouge. I ended up paying 8,000 sena for it. The prices are too high. I had just spent 141,000 senas on perfume, a bottle of rouge, and a rouge brush. My hands kept shaking as I felt like I was losing my sense of money. Enjoying what you have isn't easy either. I had to admit that I was too frugal for such luxuries, as I kept track of my money in a small notebook, like an account book. But I had no choice, even though my brother often ripped off my paltry salary. I was so desperate to live a life that didn't make me look dirty to others. I need to get used to the luxury of spending money slowly. Let's start with other luxuries first. I decided to indulge in a luxury that didn't cost money. Enjoying the arts and culture would be a luxury that even my poor soul could fully afford. First up, Sistine Hall. It is the room I've wanted to see the most since Philip took me on a tour of the mansion, and it's full of art. I always liked to appreciate art, even in my previous life, but the opportunity to see an actual artwork in person didn't happen often to me. It's unlikely that any of the artists or works I knew in my previous life are here, but it's fun to see works that have the spirit of art in them, even if they don't belong to an artist you recognize. I left Anna with a quick note to tell her I'd be back in a few minutes and headed to Sistine Hall. As I stood in front of the hall's heavy doors, I took a deep breath and pushed them open. And the smell of the air that had been submerged in silence welcomed me. Wow! I was as awestruck as I had been the first time. The walls of the hall, larger than most galleries, are lined with artworks ranging from those as small as the palm of your hand to those so large you can only take in a glance from a distance. I admired the works in a relaxed manner, as if I had the gallery to myself. It was a luxury even greater than buying an expensive perfume. Oh my God, how did they paint this? I stood in front of the work, which was so exquisite, I wondered if it had been photographed, and leaned in close to examine the fine brushstrokes. This reminds me of Monet's. It's beautiful. Like Monet's work, the feast of light and color made me stare at it in awe. Oh, this is so cute. I couldn't help but smile at the expectant look on the puppy's face. In the painting of a girl playing with her dog, then I noticed an enormous piece of artwork. I couldn't really take it all in at once, so I walked over to the opposite wall and crouched down on the floor to look up at it. Wonderful. It depicts a scene of war. The blood-red sky and the many bloody bodies of soldiers on the ground represent the tragedy of war. But the eyes of the godlike man of war standing above are filled with the desire to end it all. The liveliness of the horses as they stomp their feet and bellow long and loud, the desire to win and the grave sense of responsibility on the face of the male god leading the soldiers, the various expressions on the faces of the soldiers who trust and follow him, and the gnashing of teeth on the faces of the people who want to help them even with their farm tools. Looking at such a magnificent piece of art, I am simply speechless. But then someone spoke to me. Your attitude of appreciating works of art is really unconventional. Huh? Before I knew it, Declan was approaching. What are you doing here? What's so weird about me coming to appreciate the art in my house? Oh, that's right. Well, the Regelhoffs aren't much into art, so it's a wonder you're here at all. He's being snarky. It's not like a taunt. You don't have this in your house, do you? If I weren't in the position of needing Declan to save my life, I'd have yelled at him for his arrogance. In other words, I'm not in that position right now. You're right. And you even rotate the displays once a month. That's quite a collection. I smiled in amazement, but Declan's expression didn't improve. How do you feel about the artwork? Declan asked instead, looking up at the large artwork. I feel overwhelmed. There are so many emotions of so many people in this piece. It's hard to believe it could have been imagined by a single artist. I get a little more courage seeing Declan nod his head despite his furrowed brow. War is a tragedy, but I see in that man in the painting a noble will to end it. Everyone is looking up to him, and he doesn't look like he's reveling in the praise of others. I get the feeling that he's not going to be happy even if he wins, because war is nothing to be happy about, even in victory. War is a tragedy no matter how you slice it, and the hero who wins it is the one who knows that best. I nodded at his words. Declan glanced in my direction, then added an afterthought. It was painted to commemorate my grandfather's victory in the war against the kingdom of Yanuk. He is the model for the male god leading the soldiers. Oh, I bet you didn't know that at all. Yeah, I didn't know. Declan's brows furrowed further at my blatant answer. I never heard that you enjoy art, so why are you here? Well, as you get older, your tastes change. I wasn't much into it before, but I've been getting more and more interested in it since before we got married, and to have a place like this here. Well, can I just pass it up? I shrugged it off and stood up. Then I walked over to the next artwork. So, do you have a favorite artist? Declan unexpectedly asked about my tastes, which seemed like a good opportunity to get to know him. But alas, I don't know any of the artists in this world. The author of this story didn't even mention a single artist's name in this world, so how would I know? This is embarrassing. But as I said, I got interested in this recently, so I don't know any of the artists. Not at all? Yeah. He sighed lowly and turned his attention back to the painting, shaking his head. Rather than disturbing him, I decided to take a look at other works. In doing so, I forgot that Declan was there. "Oh my!" I exclaimed in front of the painting, which looked like a scene from a myth. And the shepherd boy in the painting, who looked to be about 15 years old, looked exactly like Declan. Declan, intrigued by my reaction, came over to me, then panicked. When I was younger, I was forced to model for a painter who was close to my father. Declan stammered out an excuse, but when I found something about him to tease, I tilted my head and put on a serious face, pretending not to hear what he said. What is it?" "Nothing." "What is it?" "Nothing. Just. I was wondering if it was still that size." Then I moved on to the next painting. The shepherd boy was dressed in a tattered robe, almost completely naked, and of course his little preciouses was depicted. Turning back to the painting, Declan blushed and protested. "The body in the painting is not mine." "Oh, I see. Isn't that obvious? A noble scion would never strip naked in front of a painter." "I suppose so." I could tell Declan was gritting his teeth even if I didn't see him as he continued in an irritated tone. I honestly wanted to laugh in his face, but I bit my lip and held it together. It might have made him angrier. "What the hell? You're a difficult woman to discuss art with," Declan accused me with a scowl, then turned around and stalked out. I chuckled to myself as I watched him leave. Actually, it's not so bad considering I'm trying to save my life. It's a little too dull to live without a joke. But it's much bigger than that now, isn't it? I glanced at the shepherd boy's groin and burst out laughing again. It's been more than 2 months since I possessed Edith. Whether it's because of the amazing adaptability of humans or the presence of Edith's memories, I've adapted to this world much better than I thought I would. As long as I stayed quiet, the stares seemed to fade away, and my days were peaceful. I wish I could live like this forever. I often leaned over the railing of the Great Hall and looked out over the garden downstairs. Before that, I'd check to make sure Liz's tea time wasn't held on the balcony of the Great Hall. I also explored the garden outside the mansion. It was springtime and I felt so energized just walking around the garden. The smell of grass everywhere and the tiny flowers in bloom seemed to soothe my weary soul. But most of all, I enjoyed my morning walks on the trails near the training ground. Today, I was alone on the path. I could tell by the clinking of blades that someone was using the training ground. I strolled along, pretending to be oblivious, and when I realized that no one was around, I darted back and forth between the garden trees that the gardener had cut with artistic flair. This is why I take a walk in the garden. Crouching on the ground at the side of a not-so-lush garden tree, I began to peer toward the training ground. Today, too, my husband is in good health. Peeking at a shirtless Declan during training is a new hobby of mine. The first time I stumbled upon this path and saw him topless, I thought I was going to get a real nosebleed. I can't believe I'm the only one watching this graceful scene. I feel bad for the other I refuse your obsession readers. It doesn't matter how many times I see it. It's always a thrill. It's always new. Always handsome. I really want to wave a light stick. I've never seen a man with a broad chest and big muscles look so good. Look at those well-defined muscles. With a broad back as if the muscles are angry and dimples of Venus that pierce like arrows. The shepherd boy's groin must be much more dignified now than it was in the Sistine Hall the last time I saw it. He's a jerk, but he's really handsome. As expected, I'd rather have Declan than Cliff. Cliff, who trains with him in the opposite corner, is also shirtless, but he's subtly more muscular than Declan. I'm sure there are people who like that kind of body, but I prefer rounded, toned muscles like Declan's. I watched his muscles bulge with his vigorous movements for a while, until my squatting legs started to tingle, and I realized it was time to turn around. Nice show today. With that, I said my goodbye inwardly and turned to leave. But Declan looked up, staring off somewhere as he smiled and waved. Huh. My heart nearly dropped. Even though I was looking at him from a distance, I could just make out his narrowed eyes and the corners of his mouth curling up coldly. And I realized that his smiling face was so beautiful. It wasn't until he turned again that I realized who he was looking at. Ah, it's Liz. At the end of his gaze, Liz was waving at the two men. Yeah, well, there's no one else Declan would smile at like that. Even with that realization, I've been squatting in a daze for a while now. I knew in my head that I should get up and go into the mansion. But the image of Declan smiling kept coming back to me, and I couldn't do anything about it. I must have been an idiot. In my 28 years as Choi Minji, I never once thought I was an idiot. But I guess it's because I've never seen a truly handsome face in my previous life. I thought a man's character and heart were important, but that was all my hypocrisy. I pondered Declan's rapturous face again and again, until I could barely feel my toes and limped back to the mansion. The visual and mental trauma caused by Declan's face does not diminish what I must do today. I made my way to the Duchess's office. Starting today, I need you to organize the documents in there and write up a nice list of what we need to buy, in what quantities, and at what prices. It will probably take a few days because of the volume, but there is no rush. So take your time. Yes, Mother. The documents given to me today were about weapons and armor that House Ludwig wished to purchase. Have they completely let their guard down on me, letting me touch these documents? The details of weapons and armor purchases should be top secret information, but judging by the fact that they've given me the task of organizing them, it seems my efforts have not been in vain. It was clear that the blade pointing at my throat was moving further and further away. I began to organize the documents, grouping them by type, and describing the advantages and disadvantages of each weapon and armor. As I did so, I tabulated what I could see. I wrote them down in a table so I could see them all at a glance later. I was so engrossed in sorting and organizing the documents that I didn't even realize that someone was standing next to me. When I looked up, Liz was standing next to me, watching me work. She made eye contact with me and smiled, but I felt a pit in my stomach. Not again. It's been a really strange symptom ever since. There was something about the way she was looking at me that was strangely disturbing. Is it something that Edith in the original story has by default? Considering that I possessed the character of a Rofane novel with full memories, it was entirely possible. I'm trying to change the things that are destined to happen in this world, so maybe there's a force trying to keep things the way they are in the original story. I can't lose to the original character settings, or else I'll lose my head. I swallowed hard and smiled prettily. Liz, when did you come? Oh, just now, but… Yes? What's this? Asked Liz, taking the piece of paper I was tabling and scratching her head. It's a table. If I organize it like this, it'll be easier to see at a glance later. I've never seen anyone organized like this. Really? Is there a world without tables? In reality, tables have existed since time immemorial, but the author may have intentionally set up a world without them. After all, at first glance, a narrative document looks more elegant. Anyway, it's easier to read this way, isn't it? I smiled awkwardly and explained the structure of the table, but Liz's expression didn't brighten even after I finished. It's definitely a way to put a lot of information on one sheet, as you said. But to be honest, I think it would be a little awkward for others to see. Why? Well, it's a matter of familiarity, I guess. You've been using this kind of organization, but other people haven't, and they're going to be confused about what to look at. Is that so? Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm a 21st century person, but the story is set in fictionalized early modern Europe, Some of the things I say and do in the 21st century may not be consistent with the setting of this world. So, as I was thinking about retabling my tabulations and writing them out like any other document, the Duchess stood up from her seat and approached me. "What's wrong?" Before I had a chance to answer her gentle question, Liz smiled like an angel and replied, "I was just helping Edith organize some things. She's still a little new to the job." Wow, it looks like Liz is helping Edith a lot. She seemed pleased. She was happy that Liz, the wife-to-be of her first son, and I, the wife of her second son, were helping each other out. But somehow I felt a little, very little, offended. "I'm sorry, manager. Minji still hasn't gotten the hang of Excel, and I'll make sure she gets it right." This reminded me of my previous life, when I had been criticized for doing a good job. In my previous life, I had been bombarded with all sorts of paperwork. But this task of the Duchess was not the least bit difficult. For the past 3 weeks, I've always done more than the Duchess asked, without making any mistakes. But why does Liz think I'm unaccustomed to the job when she knows that my table is a convenient method? In my previous life, I couldn't say a word to the manager who was angry with me, but now I wanted to. Yes, Liz is helping me a lot. But Mother, I'd like to ask you what you think about this table. Huh? Table? I quickly slid the table I'd drawn in front of the Duchess. There's a lot of information in the documents, and I've been trying to organize them in a simple way, so I'm writing each bearer's name here, like this. And I'm writing down keywords for each item, and I'm writing down the quantity and price to buy here, I explained, pointing to each column and row of the table. The Duchess, the general manager, listened intently to my explanation. Liz says it's not used much, so it's probably unfamiliar to other people. But I thought it wouldn't hurt for you to try it, since you need to see a lot of information. She looked at the table I had drawn and smiled broadly. "My goodness, I can't believe you thought of all this. Edith, you're amazing." Is that so? Of course. This is such a great idea. I think we should organize our documents this way from now on. The Duchess nodded, fumbling over the table I'd drawn again and again. She seemed to be thinking to herself and understanding the structure of the table. "Can you organize all of the documents this way now, so that the others and I can learn from what you have done?" "Sure." "Okay." For some reason, my heart leapt. I felt like an elementary school student whose homeroom teacher patted my head. After feeling this for a while, I came to my senses. Oops, Liz isn't in a bad mood, is she? I glanced over at Liz, but she was nodding intently, looking at the paper on which I had drawn the table, just as the Duchess did. Then, as if sensing my gaze, she looked up at me and gave me an apologetic look. The small smile on her face, with her eyebrows arched, somehow made me feel even more sorry for her. Did I say that without thinking about Liz's face too much? I thought of the senior who had hit me on the back of the head, and I involuntarily flared up. If I want to survive in this world, I have to look good to Liz. I forgot my role. I'm supposed to be like a plant in this house, inconspicuous and harmless. Feeling the crisis, I smiled moderately, and then broke in at just the right time. But actually, if I think about it, it's all thanks to Liz, because she's been helping me along the way, and she's taught me everything. Oh no, I didn't. Honestly, Edith knew so much that I didn't have much to teach her. Liz waved her hands, humbled. "I don't know if that's going to make you feel any better about me. Cut me some slack, Liz." I flashed her a smile as best I could. It was grim, but I couldn't help it. I just hope Liz isn't offended by me. The villainous supporting character, sigh. It's very rare that Declan stops by my room. The only times he's been in my room since we got married were on our wedding night, and briefly before Liz's tea time. So for him to come in the morning and sit there like that, seemingly with no business, was enough to make me nervous. What is this? Is this the prelude to another episode? Maybe it's because I'm not fully awake yet, but I have no idea which episode this is. Declan sat on the couch in the small parlor off my bedroom, his expressionless face scanning the room. In contrast to his impeccable appearance, I was still in my nightgown, having only just rolled out of bed and washed my face. He didn't say a word until Anna made tea and brought it in. Did he catch me snooping around in the morning? Or did Count Regelhoff make a scene? Or did Liz complain the other day about all the documents I was doing with that table? I tried to look nonchalant on the outside, even as my mind raced through all sorts of disturbing scenarios. The tea was set down in front of me and Declan by Anna, so there would be no poisoning incident. "Are you here because you missed me?" No sooner had I spoken than Declan shot me an emotionless stare. "Oh, you are not," I hurriedly added. "Are you telling me to just say it quickly and get the hell out of here? If I ask you to stay longer, will you stay longer?" "You don't lose a word." I never learned how to lose. I know. I quickly regretted it when I realized that Declan's response was to smirk and give me the cold shoulder. Why do I keep forgetting that Declan is a character that's set up to behead me? Whenever I see Declan, I'm all playful, and I have something to say. Is this an influence from the original story? Because the original Edith was always messing around with Declan, although it's not quite the same. Declan just stared at me and didn't say anything, even though I'd opened up the conversation. Eventually, I gave up trying to get a response from him and just sipped my tea and enjoyed my morning as usual. The weather was nice again today. The flowers were in full bloom, and everywhere I looked, there was a beautiful greenery. I got up from my seat and opened the window. The fresh, spring-scented air slowly filled my room. The weather is nice. It was still a little chilly, but it felt refreshing. I was about to fix my shawl when Declan came up behind me and spread his arms, trapping me between him and the window. I stiffened, too flustered by the unexpectedness of the situation. "I heard you helped my mother well." "Yes." "Oh, well, that's the obvious thing to do. I heard you're suspiciously good at it." Suddenly, I wondered what the hell this was all about. Maybe yesterday's events had reached Declan's ears. "You'd better not make a fool of yourself. I'm telling you to forget what you saw and heard in my mother's room the moment you leave it." "Don't worry. I'm not smart enough to remember all that." "Well, surprisingly, you don't seem to have a very bad brain." "What? Are you here to pick a fight?" "No. I think it's good. And I want you to tell me at a distance, or my heart will jump out." "Oh, and what else?" "My mother's favorite boutique was too classy and highbrow for your tastes?" "Yes." "What is this again?" "If you have a favorite, just say so. I'll call it for you." "No, For someone who's famous for never wearing the same dress twice, I thought it was quite the way to protest that you didn't get a new dress. So now, even the fact that I didn't buy a new dress is a reason to hate me? I was just trying to break out of my extravagant image, but the end result is the same as the original story. It's unfair." His misunderstanding and accusations were strangely hard to bear, even though I'd vowed not to get on Declan's bad side. A way to protest. Declan didn't answer. "Declan, you really don't know anything about me." "What do you mean, I don't know?" "If I didn't like the boutique, I would have called another one right then and there. Why would I let them alter my dress? Do you think I'd make a fuss about something like that?" I straightened my hunched shoulders and turned to face him. He flinched and stepped back slightly, as if I were going to rub his lower body. "It's not like I did anything wrong. You just hate me, and somehow you're making it fit that I'm the cause of it." "That. Of course I can see why you'd want to blame me. It would make you feel better." I rambled on, so I couldn't tell what my expression was like. I think Declan was pretty surprised, but I had to say something. "It's cowardly." "Excuse me?" The way you're trying to cement your own happiness at the expense of an innocent person like me, the way you're acting like you're the only victim, is cowardly." Declan's eyes widened. They were quickly filled with anger. "Is that how you feel about the position you earned by blackmailing my family? Did I make that threat? I've never seen a child stab his father in the tail before. You don't know anything about me, Declan." "Nothing. I know enough about the Regelhoffs, though." In the end, to Declan no, to everyone in House Ludwig, everyone in the Regelhoff family was bad people. No matter what I did, no matter what I tried to do. As long as you keep your head down, nothing untoward will happen to you, so don't do anything to arouse suspicion. That's the most advice I can give you. I was devastated. He's going to be suspicious no matter what I do. That's good advice, I reply, turning away from him. I didn't want to see more of him. Not now, not with his blossoming handsome. Declan glared at me, then turned and left. The sound of the door closing with a thud seemed to show me that he had completely closed himself off to me. I was alone in a large, beautifully decorated room. The room that seemed to be full of life just a moment ago now felt somehow empty. Loneliness rose from the tip of my toes. What's wrong with me now? I've always been alone. I quickly turned my head back to the window, feeling like I was going to cry. A few small birds were perched on a branch in front of me, chirping. I envied the birds because they didn't seem to have any worries, just enjoying the glorious spring that was coming. If possible, I'll stay in this house and suck honey until I die, but if things don't go well, I'll have to run away at night. Well, the time has come for me to seriously consider the next best option, which is to run away. It came a little too quickly than I thought. Okay, starting tomorrow, I'll focus more on saving money. I shook off my depression and called Anna. It wasn't like anyone was going to care if I was sad anyway. It always was. After leaving Edith's room, Declan headed straight for the training ground. He had only stopped by Edith's room on impulse. Damn it. Why did I do something to offend her? Probably because of what he'd heard from the Duchess and Liz yesterday. You know, Edith is so clever. She even figured out how to organize information in a grid like this. The Duchess showed Declan the table Edith had made with amazement. Even to him, it was an efficient way to organize. I suppose we can condense information like this. Declan, the way I see it, Edith is trying to fit in. She's trying to save herself. It's the same for her. She's been forced into an arranged marriage, and she's been left alone in what is essentially enemy territory. Can't you feel a little sorry for her? Even though Edith was the daughter of an enemy, his mother still felt sorry for her. But Declan couldn't let his guard down about Edith. Because Liz's perspective was a little different than the Duchess's. My mother said she did a good job. But what do you think, Liz? I think she is very smart. The nuance of her answer was subtle. Like she is smart, but there's something off about her. Is there something else? Oh no! She learned so fast, unlike me, who never learned anything at Sinclair. And that makes me a little envious. Liz. Declan smiled bittersweetly and put an arm around Liz's shoulders to comfort her. But he took the point Liz made with a grain of salt. After all, it was only because of her 4 years of education that Liz was able to help the Duchess as much as she was now. And she picked up the knowledge very quickly for someone who hadn't learned anything at Sinclair. And it was no secret that she was smart. If she makes Liz jealous, it's not because she's smart, it's because she's already trained for it. Besides, the last time I saw her at Sistine Hall and talked to her, she didn't seem as stupid as the rumors made her out to be. She said she didn't know any artists, but from the way she talked about the paintings, she wasn't a dumbass, and she understood them. Sure, it sucked that she teased me about the damn painting at the last minute, but... So this morning, on my way to sword training, I suddenly had the idea to stop by Edith's room. I need to keep an eye on her and warn her not to pull any stunts. With that resolve in mind, Declan entered Edith's room and felt an unfamiliar and strange tension. It smells like roses. Unlike Liz's room, which smelled faintly of violets, Edith's room smelled sensually of roses. The scent, a combination of roses and something that smelled like soft flesh, made Declan forget what he had come to say. Huh? Why so early? What's going on? He was even more puzzled by Edith, who greeted him with a tilt of her head. What's wrong with your pajamas? Her off-the-shoulder, lightweight nightgown was hanging precariously, threatening to slip off at any moment, revealing her naked silhouette wherever the sunlight filtered through. Moreover, her face was still sleepy, as if she had been possessed by something, which only added to stimulate the strange feeling. He looked around the room and tried to push the strange feeling down. Luckily, Edith's intervention quickly brought him back to his senses. But when Edith, who had been sipping her tea, walked over to the window and opened it, her scent drifted in on the wind, and Declan unwittingly swept her into his arms. Standing motionless, Edith's rosy ears, parted lips, slender nape, and curving shoulders and sternum made him giddy. What am I doing? The embarrassment and panic that came with the realization forced me to blurt out something like, "You did a good job helping my mother. Just keep doing what you're doing, and don't think about anything weird." I also remember that Edith had only had her clothes altered at Ruail's boutique, so I told her that she could call another boutique. I admit that I didn't say it in a gentlemanly way, but I didn't expect to be criticized by her. It's not like I did anything wrong, you just hate me. I can see why you'd want to blame me. It would make you feel better. It's cowardly. Why did I have to hear that? My head was spinning. The more I thought about it, the more my temples throbbed. You don't know anything about me, Declan. Nothing. Why did that woman's face look so sad when she said that? And she was right. Declan knows nothing about Edith. From the beginning, he had seen her only as Count Riegelhoff's daughter, and everything he had assumed about her was based on his impressions of Count Riegelhoff. The pain started at his temple and spread to his entire head, until it felt like his skull was going to crack. Declan. And when Liz's voice was heard from somewhere, his throbbing head gradually got better. Liz. Liz, who often came to watch Declan and Cliff sparring, was on her way to the training ground today as well. Declan was relieved that the pain was fading. Declan, what's wrong? Are you hurt? Oh no, I'm fine. He could smell the fresh scent of violets as Liz looked up at him with concern. Yeah, I like the faint scent of violets. The strong rose scent is just disgusting. With that thought in mind, his head felt better. I'm really okay, Liz. I've been dealing with an asshole of a woman this morning, and I just wanted to take a moment. Did you meet Edith? I came to warn her not to get her hopes up. Declan. I didn't say anything mean. Declan couldn't really explain why he'd stopped by Edith's room. Not at the moment. But with Liz by his side, he didn't have to think too hard about it. She's just a spy sent in by Count Riegelhoff, and if she hates her situation, she should blame her father. With that thought, Declan pushed Edith's sad eyes out of his mind. He tried to erase them. After Declan left, I had to find something to occupy myself with for a few days to keep my mind off of him. If I wasn't doing something, I'd soon find myself thinking about Declan's cold words, which felt like a knife to my heart. In times like this, you need to get out. In my past life, when I was feeling a little down, I would fill a large tumbler with iced Americano and walk outside. I especially loved going to big malls, where window shopping or sitting on a bench and people watching would cheer me up. It was also frustrating to be stuck inside the mansion ever since I possessed Edith. I deliberately stayed at home to avoid the root of the original Edith, who was out partying and gossiping about Liz, but I thought, wouldn't it be nice to go out and explore the town? As soon as I made up my mind, I called Anna. Anna, let's go out. For the first time, Anna's eyes widened in surprise at the out-of-the-blue outing. But she didn't question or look troubled. Yes, my lady. I will inform the Duchess, and we will be ready to go out immediately. Yes, please. While Anna went off to inform the Duchess, I took a small bag and packed the jewelry I had removed from my dress when it was altered. Then I opened my wardrobe and rummaged through it, choosing something to wear. Doing this seemed to lighten my gloomy mood. Anna returned to convey the Duchess's permission and put a dress on me. Where are you going out? Actually, that's what I was going to ask you. Where do you think it would be fun to go out? To be honest, I've never been out on the town by myself before. Again, Anna's eyes widened, but she quickly lowered her gaze, as if she'd been trained not to ask back. I guess it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for cute clothing stores, accessory stores, and dessert cafes, La Belle Marie Street is a good place to start. Or if you're looking for banks, galleries, the opera house, and upscale cafes, the Darceau's Street will be fine. Let's go to Darceau's Street. Yes, miss. Thanks to Anna, who had calmly arranged the outing without asking any unnecessary questions, I climbed into the carriage in good spirits without having to make any excuses. The view from the carriage window was enough to get me excited. This is the downtown of the Rofan world. The early modern European streets were laid out to my liking, with little in the way of antiquity. It was like walking through a theme park decorated in a European style. As I stared out the carriage window, the carriage turned left at a large intersection and onto a street lined with stately stone buildings. We've arrived, miss. Okay. Anna instructed the coachman to go to a carriage waiting somewhere along this street and came to stand beside me. Do you have somewhere to stop? Yes. I'd like to stop by a jeweler first. There are several famous jewelers. I'd like to go to one that gives a good price for gems. Do you know where it is? Anna thought for a moment and then suggested 3 places: Amabile, Datrias, and Route Pecan. How do you know so much, Anna? You seem to know everything in the world. You're too kind. Of course, she is probably an extra created by the author to avoid boring and uninteresting narratives. But I couldn't be happier to have a character by my side who knows the answer every time I ask her a question. Who needs the internet? I have Anna. Let's go to Amabile first then. I circled the jewelry store with light steps. Luckily, the diamonds I brought out were of high quality, so I was able to get a much higher price than I expected. The highest bidder was Datrias, but they said they could only pay by check. So I sold it to the next highest bidder, Amabile, for all cash. Let's go to the bank this time. The bank is right over there. Anna pointed to a sturdy-looking building in the middle of the street. I wonder if this is how Harry Potter felt when he first visited the Gringotts Wizarding Bank? I thought back to the fantasy novels I'd enjoyed reading in my previous life, as I walked through the bank's main entrance, lined with massive columns like a Greek temple, and stepped inside. Thank you for visiting the Central Bank of Malin. A man clad like a butler greeted me politely as I entered the bank. Unlike the bank in my previous life, this one looked more like a library. Please tell me what brings you here, and I'll help you out. I'm here to make a safe in my name. I see. Then this way. I followed the man's lead to the teller's window, where the chairs were plush and luxurious, and the interior of the bank must have been equally so. Well, this is a bank for nobles. I looked around curiously and smiled at the teller's greeting. You want to open a safe deposit box? Yes, sir. A safe in my name. One that only I can open. There are 3 types of safes. A small safe for 10 million senas or less, a medium safe for 100 million senas or less, and a large safe for more. Which one would you like me to open for you? By the way, starting with the medium-sized safe, we charge a maintenance fee in proportion to the amount you entrust to us. I have just over 5 million senas in cash from the jewelry exchange, and I have taken 4 million senas from my savings cash. I think I'll get to 10 million senas in no time, and I don't need to pay the maintenance fee up front. I'll open a small safe for now, and we'll switch to a medium later. Okay, then please sign the opening agreement. Nervous but nonchalant, I read the opening agreement carefully and then coolly signed it. But I didn't forget to use a pseudonym, just in case. Then I handed over 9 million senas to be deposited in the safe. It was a lot of money to me, but I wasn't surprised to see that it was nothing in the eyes of a bank employee who sees money every day. When you withdraw money, you will be asked a few questions to verify your identity, along with a password and a signature. If you get one wrong, you won't be able to withdraw the money, so don't forget your password. Okay? Thank you. I walked out of the bank, feeling as grandiose as an elementary school kid with his first passbook. I was relieved to find the last 300,000 senas in my bag after opening the safe. Now let's go get something to eat, Anna. Hungry, I headed toward Anna's recommended restaurant and was surprised to see a long line outside a dessert cafe. What is that? That's Peridot, one of the most popular bakeries in the capital. Some of their products are famously hard to find, even if you line up before the store opens. Wow, is it that good? I don't know because I haven't tried it. But they say that when noble ladies visit other houses, they always send their servants to buy strawberry tarts from there. I was very tempted, but I wondered if I should go to the trouble of sending servants. After all, we needed to eat, not tea or cake. I took Anna to a restaurant with a nice outdoor terrace. The restaurant was next to a park with lots of lush green foliage, so we could enjoy our food in the fresh air. The food was expensive because it was a restaurant where nobles came and went. But I was willing to pay for Anna, who followed me around without any hassle. I'm happy that I can eat to my heart's content without worrying about money. I still clearly remember in my previous life, I used to pack lunches to save money. When I sat alone in the bathroom, eating my lunch, some people would open the window in annoyance, while others would look at me as if seeing something strange. Yes, just having a lot of money is enough to make you happy, so let's trust in money instead of expecting something emotional from others. I tried to convince myself to be strong, but even as I thought that, I couldn't help but feel bitter. If someone else could earn the favor of others so easily, why was it so hard for me? But it wasn't time to get frustrated. I shared a plate of bread and sea bass with cheese and ham with Anna, and we chatted about this and that. And I played the fool to get to the point. You said that commoners don't have carriages at home, so what do they take when they travel? They rent carriages, or they pay to ride on long-distance carriages. And when they stop along the way, do they stay at inns? Those who can afford it stay in inns, and those who can't often sleep on the streets. If I'm going to run away, I need to know how to take a long-distance carriage ride and how to stay at an inn. Wow, that's interesting. Where do you take a long-distance carriage? I've never seen one before. Of course you have, because a long-distance carriage looks nothing like a noble's carriage. Think of it as a covered carriage. Yuck. That's going to be a bad ride. That's why everyone packs motion sickness pills. In the capital, the place where the long-distance carriages gather is near the South Gate. Okay. Long-distance carriages near the South Gate of the capital. Take motion sickness pills. If you want to stay at an inn or something, do you send someone to make reservations? Usually you just walk into any inn you see, and if there's a room, you stay. If not, you don't. People who don't have money sleep in stables. You sleep in a stable? Why? Are inns expensive? The cheap ones are around 3,000 senas a night, but the expensive ones can go up to 7,000 senas, so they're expensive for commoners. I should be able to get an inn for around 5,000 senas a night, right? I've got it in my head. I ended the conversation about traveling with a look of wonder on my face, like a young lady who doesn't know a thing about the world, which is true. There were many things I wanted to ask, but I knew that Anna, a maid of the Ludwig family, would post a report of my outing, and a long tale is bound to get stepped on. Is there anything else you need? No. I just came out today to sell the jewelry I removed from my clothes and open the safe. And your company made me feel much better. So thank you, Anna. Anna's expression barely changed at my thanks, but I could tell after spending months with her that she was a little surprised. I could only hope that it was a positive thing. Once I started to seriously consider running away, I realized that as a mansion dweller, I had to actively use the library to get information about how to live in the world. Luckily, the people in this house don't seem to care about what I read in the library. So today, I've been holed up in the library since morning, searching for books on survival and reading them. I was just getting started on how to tell the difference between sea beans and soybeans when Anna appeared out of nowhere and quietly called out to me. Yes, Anna, what is it? I will escort you to the Duchess's drawing room, miss. Why, is someone looking for me? Yes. The jeweler is here, and the Duchess has asked me to also bring you. The also part made me think that Liz was already there. To be honest, I didn't want to see Liz or Declan just yet, but the Duchess had asked me to come. Besides, there's a jeweler. Yes. I'd better do everything at once while I still can, in preparation for my runaway. Emotions fade away. It's a fool's errand to get caught up in feelings that will fade away and miss the important things. Okay, let's go. I left the book with the librarian and followed Anna into the Duchess' parlor. In the parlor were not only the Duchess and Liz, but also Cliff and Declan. They were already spreading out the jeweler's wares and selecting something for Liz. I really didn't want to get in the middle of all that cheerfulness, but I smiled as if I didn't care. I am here, Mother. Ah, Edith. Welcome. Unlike the welcoming Duchess, Declan's gaze towards me was still cold. Well, at least he looked at me, though not in greeting. A far cry from our wedding day, when he didn't even turn his head towards me. This is Mr. Felix Eppart, owner of Eppart, a jeweler with whom our family has done business for many years. I've called you in because we've had some good stuff come in for a while. So if you like what you see, take your pick. Thank you. On one couch sat the Duchess, Liz, and Cliff, and on the other, Mr. Felix, the jeweler, and Declan. I had no choice but to sit next to Declan. After a few awkward moments, they resumed playing princess, asking Liz to try this and that. Don't you think this sapphire goes so well with Liz's eyes? I agree. What about this pearl necklace? The white pearl necklace I bought her last time wasn't bad, but I think this one looks better with the creamy color. Liz continued to fiddle with her hands, while the Duchess and Cliff seemed excited. Declan, for some reason, was not actively participating, only occasionally pointing at something that looked good. As I watched, I remembered reading this episode in the original story. Oh, this is it. The jeweler episode where Edith is humiliated. In the original story, the people at the jeweler only cared about Liz. When Liz sees this, she offers Edith a small necklace, but Edith furiously rejects it, asking, "Where did that little thing come from?" Whenever someone puts jewelry on Liz, she says, "I'll have that one," without even looking at it. The jeweler is at a loss and says, "Everything in here is a one-of-a-kind," and Cliff writes a blank check for every piece of jewelry except the necklace that Liz recommended to Edith. At the time, I thought it was funny, but now that I'm in her shoes, I get it. It must have hurt her pride. Of course, Edith's attitude wasn't right, but maybe she had been hurt so badly that she had no choice but to act that way. I mean, why do you bring people in the first place and then treat them like they're a bunch of dirt? while I was thinking about the original story. Liz, as if embarrassed that people only recommended jewelry to her, suddenly pointed to one of the necklaces and said, "I think this necklace would look great on Edith." The original episode went ahead without my interruption. The necklace Liz pointed to was a thin gold necklace with a small red gemstone in the shape of a teardrop. I thought Edith refused because Liz chose something strange for her, but it's pretty. Does Edith hate it because Liz chose it? The jewelry was on the smaller side of what the jeweler had laid out. But honestly, from a modern perspective, I'd rather have something like this than a couture accessory with a bunch of big gems. Oh my gosh, that's so pretty. Is this ruby? I said that because the only red gemstone I knew was a ruby, and luckily it was a ruby. You both have great taste. It's a top-grade ruby. The gold chain design and bezel setting were done by one of our best craftsmen. There's no way I can figure out what's so great about it. But I guess that means it's pretty and expensive. I stared at the ruby for a while, admiring its vivid, clear red color. Why don't you try it on? Try it, Edith. It can feel different from what you see, the jeweler and Liz encouraged. I smiled nervously and reached for the necklace, but someone picked it up before I did. Declan. Without a word, he unclasped the necklace. I wondered what was wrong with him, but then I noticed the Duchess watching from the other side with a proud face.